Alright, forgot to set up chat. Nothing but professional over here. Let me do that real quick. There we go. Alright. So today we're going to do something a little bit different for this channel, although it's, anyone who knows me, it's something that I do quite often, which is play tabletop on Tabletop Simulator. More specifically, I'm going to set up the new table in Tabletop Simulator for next season. This is probably going to be a season that we're going to stream. We've been playing for 2 or 3 years, Edge of the Empire, and we've never streamed it before, and we're all a little nervous about it, but we're going to go ahead and give it a shot and see how that goes. We also have an additional player. We've played for years with 4 people, 4 players and 1 GM, 5 people, and we're going to pick up an additional player this season, so it's going to be all kinds of new stuff. Hopefully it all turns out pretty good. So, that's obviously not working right off the bat. Tabletop Simulator. You are slow and you're pretty well locked up. That's nice. Alright, first and foremost, this is. Second off, I don't need whatever that is. Okay, so yes, it's a mess. All of these are hidden zones that the players can't see, and I've been collecting this season of Edge of the Empire, where this was a clean. Last time I cleaned this table and set it up was at the, I was to say, midway through the first season of The Mandalorian. So it does not take me a ton of time to clutter this thing all the way up. And what we're doing today is we're going to create another player area. We're going to move some dice roller and side tables around. And we're going to try to declutter as much as possible the work area for the GM. The zones right here obviously make this board completely superfluous, but I like to have it because it has all sorts of details. But one of the things I'm going to try to do to open up the little bit more floor space is, while all this stuff here is cool, the only thing we use on a regular basis is this and this. We don't do the force tokens the way everyone else does, so we'll probably move this, maybe even just get rid of it. And we're going to move this back. We're going to get rid of a lot of these decorative things. Not that I don't really enjoy all the little decorative details, but every time everyone loads in, they got to load in everything, and we're full up. So for this thing, I want to keep it, but I want it out of the way. So my thinking was that I will just take it all the way to the back, and then I'll turn it around, because I don't need a GM screen as an actual screen. I have these zones that hide everything, but it would be really nice to have access to the board so that I can still see all the little things on it. Because it's got all these charts, and I use these charts for quick references, especially the critical checks right here. Differences in I mean, all of this is good stuff. So that already looks more open and better. Of course, now these little maps and stuff I had hidden behind the GM screen are out and about where people can see them. But we'll hide those somewhere else. Yes, it does. So, actually, Matt is the one that gave me the idea. Matt's GM board is incredibly clean and tidy. Now, he doesn't use all the models and stuff that I use, but he still uses One World and all that other stuff, so I don't see any reason why I can't shave this down and clean it up. And I do want this part of the table available because that it feels so much less cluttered. Just moving that to the back makes such a huge difference in how this feels. And I need more room because I have to fit a whole nother player here, and I don't want to sacrifice... I'm going to make this a lot smaller, but I don't want to sacrifice the automatic roller. And I want to keep a sideboard, because when you activate One World, it's going to take over this whole section here, and anything you put on it will get taken out. Oh, was he having... He was having some funky tabletop issues, wasn't he? Which doesn't really make sense to me, because his computer should be better than mine for the stuff he's got in it. But I don't know, it's all different. Mine sits here and like I start tabletop up an hour before we play just to let everything load in nice and neat. And before the players even get in most of the time. So it's not like I'm booting it up right when they tune in. Because as the host, anything that's underneath this zone, the host computer loads this all when you load in. But the client computers, I don't think, actually load in this stuff until you pull it out of the zone. We shouldn't have colored them lights red, I'm telling you, man. You made his computer a dark side user. But Matt's also the one that introduced me to this mod, the Everything mod, which is if you're making RPG stuff, whether it's Edge of the Empire or D&D or whatever, that mod for tabletop has just all the props you could possibly imagine in it. It's super useful, but this thing eats your computer memory a lot, so it's going. I'll pull it out if I need it when I'm building maps, but that's going to be it. Okay, all of this has to go. This was from a previous building effort. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, damn it. Okay, well, back button time. Why are you TPing my... Why are you TPing my chat? Oh, could you ban those bots for me, please? Thank you. Oh yeah. What was it you said? You're famous now. The bots have joined your channel. Oh god. I get 2 or 3 of them every time I log in now. Since the campaign's over, I think I'm going to delete their character sheets and everything too. Because no one's playing as the existing characters. Oh yeah, you'll never be famous. You've already got more followers and average viewers than I've got by miles. You're pretty much my most loyal follower. I am getting a ton of views on the VOD, so I do think that part of mine is that I have such an irregular schedule that hurts. But I'm also not as ingrained with one particular community. I'm a variety streamer, and you never know what I'm going to be playing. Speaking of, I wanted to tell you, you should go back and watch the last RimWorld stream, because that's the last RimWorld stream for this colony. I'm not going to say what happened, but it's the last one for that colony. I brought Matt back from the dead, and it might have cursed the colony and caused bad things to happen. Alright. So this has got to get smaller. Or I could make it a 6-player table and scooch this, because now this isn't here. You could scooch this down. It's actually really good. You had like a straight up Rambo moment right there at the end, but it was the end. It's good, but I'm sad it's the last one. I'm gonna have to start a new colony next time I play. I'm gonna do some things different next time. I might do a sign up on Discord where you guys tell me what kind of characters you want or what you want their names to be, and I'll put the people who respond to it on Discord in, because when you first make the colony, you can pick 4 people that you can basically customize. Their stats are different. Your friends are really nice. I'm glad you hit your 40 followers. But yeah, I might do a thing where people can sign up. This was such a good campaign. These are all the bounties they did. I guess I don't really have a choice but to ditch these things. They're really not useful anymore. Oh, there's the big bad. That didn't work. Matt always has big plans. Matt's a good storyteller, but the players tend to derail his stories so quickly. He gets discouraged by that. Alright. It almost hurts doing this, but I got to. I might keep this one. This one might become valuable later. We don't use this, and we don't use this. That's what Discord's for. So that's going to be what they're going to look like now. How hard is it to scooch everything all at once? Uh-oh. Oh, damn it. Oh, wait, no. It kind of worked. Shit. Come on. There we go. That is not easy, but it can be done. Okay. I wonder if I should use one of the other colors. I didn't ask this guy what color he preferred. Oh, don't want to delete the critical dice. They're everybody's favorite. I'll put it back after I move everything. Okay, don't need that. Okay. Shit. What's this? Is that hidden in that inside of that somewhere? It is. Is that under all of them or just his? Uh-oh. Okay. Okay. Now I just need to replicate that. Oh. Okay. I think we can work with this. How does it look? It's a little cramped, but I think they'll be fine. Okay, that means that this table has got to be shrunk. And that is probably going to make this image contort. Welcome back. Crackly, crackly. I think I scared the new guy because I told him I was streaming. Alright, give me a second, guys. I gotta figure out how to send this guy a friend request. Friends. Laughing at me. We are the people of tomorrow. Now we're really going to be pushing it, because now we're going to be chatting in Discord, running Tabletop Simulator, running the Edge of the Empire generator, streaming. Let's go ahead and see if we can break the computer today. It's a good test. We needed to do it. Edge of the Empire, character generator. If the stream crashes, it's because my computer died. It's really angry at me right now. I wanna wake up without sorrow. Alright, all good there. Oh man, when I wrote the epilogue, I should have said, and then Jane died of cancer, because all the cigarettes. Missed opportunity. How come he doesn't have a proficiency dice? Left me all alone. Too many windows. Your laptop crashed when you raided? It did have some weird behavior for that raid. After I was in for a couple of minutes, it kicked me back out of the stream and I had to manually re-add his stream. I wonder if that had something to do with it. so that's probably you. You. You waited for someone to save you and left me all alone. This guy's gonna join chat and be like, this dude's singing. Yeah, it's gonna be a thing. Let's scare this guy off before we even start. You watch. So this has got to go on top of this part, so I can't really put that there. Too many screens to balance. I have to find, while I'm streaming, a way where I can watch Discord and watch my stream feed. Most of the people I watch who do tabletop, though, just ignore the stream feed, but I don't want to do that if I can avoid it. I'm hoping there won't be so many people that I have to constantly pay attention to it. Yeah. The problem with the third monitor is every monitor you add to your graphics card increases the strain you're putting on it if you're already having crashing issues. Come back. Okay.
Hello, it is nice to finally meet you.
What's up, man? You're super loud. Let me adjust your volume real quick.
Sorry.
It's all good. It's not you, it's me. I always got to balance volume. Let's see. Discord, Exodus Fleet, this guy, 62%. That sounds good. What's up, man? So we're gonna try to do some basic gameplay. It's just gonna be the two of us because David's driving to Georgia, so he's on the road right now.
Yep. Just give me 1 second. I'm working on getting my character sheet pulled up on my other thing just so it's easier for me to interact with.
Sure. Most of the players do keep their PDF up on their person, and I'll import it into the game, so you'll always have a reference here, but often it won't be the most recent version of your character sheet, so most of the players do keep their own copy of it. They also, I know David keeps his own copy of like the important equipment that he's got. He keeps it written down separate. In the 3 years we've been playing, we've only had 2 times where the table crashed so badly that we couldn't recover stuff on the table, but it has been known to happen, so.
Okay. So, just so you understand, the way I generally do it for myself is I keep a local copy and then I have a or GM copy.
Mm-hmm.
And I will take my own paper notes and everything to back myself up for the most part. I don't have an actual notepad to dedicate to this game yet. I'm getting that tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But I do normally have a set of notes of key items and things for myself, and then one I have given to the DM, generally about every 3 or 4 sessions, or whenever the DM asks, depending on the particular DM or GM, is how I normally do it.
Okay. So you'll find that most of the things that I'm going to give you, I'm going to have cards for. So the quote-unquote GM copy will be the stuff that's in your inventory here in Tabletop Simulator. I sent you an invite for the Tabletop Sim game, by the way. I don't know if you're caught up yet.
So it didn't pop in my thing.
That is you, the 1995 Jay Henning. That's you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a very...
But I know another way to find it and get to it, so I'm connecting right now.
Okay.
I'm just going through the in-app join function because I already had it open by the time you sent.
There you go, that's working. Do you prefer teal or brown?
I can't see the color teal properly.
Oh, you're colorblind. Okay.
I'm not colorblind. Like, I don't have any of the actual color blinds. They're just sets, like, 3 or 4 certain colors that I can't see properly.
Okay.
Certain shades of purple, teal, and a couple of shades of green are off, but I'm not actually colorblind.
Okay. Well, I made you brown for the time being, but if you have a color preference that isn't currently being used, then we can always switch up your color to something you prefer. Right now, red, green, blue, and white are in use. Black is for the GM. And I don't know what other colors we have. Let me check. There's got to be a way to look. There we go. So it looks like yellow, orange, purple, pink, teal, and brown are available.
Orange would probably be the one I'd have the least problem with.
Okay. For today, we're going to do the brown, but I will...
It's perfectly fine.
I will adjust the table so that you're orange as I finish it up.
Yep.
Okay, so now that you're in the game, let me pull up your character sheet and show you what this is going to look like.
Please hang with me. I've only played one other game in TTS, so I'm still learning.
It's all good, man.
TTS.
It's gonna take some time. This I found Edge of the Empire to be rather easy to learn. Tabletop Simulator does create some interesting artifacts. It is cool that you have this physical table that you can play with in the game. And this does make it possible with... So pretty much everyone that plays is a parent or is in some situation or another where they can't get around a physical table with people. So we find this to be the best medium.
I mean, I'm in Europe, so...
That would make it difficult to get around a table with us. That qualifies.
Hence why it's been so hard for me to actually find a group.
Okay.
Between that and the ridiculous work schedules that I have,
Okay. Hold on.
which you will probably, the longer we interact and play together, the more crazy you will see my work schedule is. This past week I had a 48-hour workday.
That sucks. I used to work 6 12-hour shifts in a row and then get like 2 or 3 days off and then have to do it again. I would not go back to that job.
I would love that schedule because I'm guaranteed time off.
Well, they say that, but like you're not really guaranteed time off because we were short-handed and we were an essential service. It was when I worked in law enforcement. So like they would tell you, hey, you know, you have to work these other shifts and we'll give you comp time, but you'd never be able to take the comp time. So when I ended up leaving that job, I had 2 months of comp time on top of my severance pay. It was quite a check.
So I've definitely been there. I've actually gotten the military to pay me paychecks while still on active duty for them not doing things.
It's nice.
Yeah, you'd say that, but...
I mean, it sucks to miss the time, but the paychecks are always nice.
Not really. Because you get paid less the time and gotten your pay for while you were taking the time. Rotated the table. That was not what I was trying to do.
Okay. Your sheet must still be in Discord. I don't understand what happened to this thing. I had it. Oh, here it is. So you're using your 50 XP plus one?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll show you basically what it looks like when it's imported. And this is just a practice character. This won't be your tournament character.
Yeah, and that's why, as we were discussing before, this is what I ended up building. Because I figured it would give me the basics of how things interact to be more combat. And because the social stuff tends to be easier to figure out than the combat stuff.
Well, it also depends on what kind of player you are. So we're very RP light. Like, we have RP sessions and combat sessions, but then I let the party spend a lot of time metagame out of RP. So we're not one of those groups that is 100% RP all the time. And that's
so my general background with RPGs and games of this nature is I am a very combat tactically minded person, so I enjoy that aspect of the game most of the time more than the actual social interactions, because I feel like a social interaction tends to and normally is just drawn out more than it needs to be, or they take too long because of the various intricate parts. Well, being said, I do enjoy RP still nonetheless.
Yeah, I guess the way I would put that is we have like you have combat sessions and we have RP sessions. So we break it out very structurally. And I don't always say, hey, this is an RP session. As a matter of fact, I usually don't. I usually, like, it's just intuitive. People understand that that's what it is. And that's
normally that stuff is easy to figure out.
Yeah, but there have also been times where, you know, David, because you know him, has gotten bored and said, I'm going to shoot my way out of this scenario, and it's turned out very badly for the party. And I'm one of those GMs that I'll let the players do whatever they want to do, whether it's going to kill everyone or not. So just keep that in mind as well. Like, I'm not gonna put the guardrails up for you guys. And
I do understand and appreciate.
I haven't had any issues with that so far. I'm having trouble importing your... There it is. Okay, here we go. There it goes. Alright, so on your table in front of you...
It is. Okay.
It's loading.
I found where my name and stuff is. Oh, okay, that's really small.
Yeah, we're going to fix that. So, have you used PDFs in Tabletop Simulator? Oh, you've rolled compact. This is only one page.
I sent you the other one too.
Okay, hold on. Let me get that one because that would be better. Yeah, you did.
So the only game I have played in Tabletop Simulator is KDM. Which does not really... it's Kingdom Death something. It's effectively a survival game. And it is very, very different from most other things people play in Tabletop Simulator. Like, there are decks and cards and stuff, and everything's pre-generated, and you just need to pull from the correct thing. And I'm not the one who sets up the game, so I haven't really played with anything beyond that.
Okay. I don't know why it's not letting me grab. Oh, it's because it has the same name as the other thing. That's why it's confused. I got you. I'm figuring it out.
Did you give it the same name?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay. I'm about to go. When I uploaded them, they had different names.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, I got the full version pulled up right now.
Thought I was being clever. It's all good. So, generally, players will throw me their updated PDFs sometime the same day as we're about to play again, but a couple hours before the session.
Okay.
Now, you don't have to have it. You can totally use your own. And I trust players to make things like blind rolls if they have to. And to update their sheets and stuff. And I don't keep track of your inventory that well either. Like, I'm not gonna. I do care about your encumbrance, and I may occasionally ask you to lay out what you're wearing and how much of it is your encumbrance, so on and so forth. But I don't, as a general rule, keep really tight. Like, I don't keep track of your encumbrance really tightly. But that's one of the reasons that I don't want you to put money or encumbrance on the character sheet, because over here you'll notice that there's this tray, and that most of the players are going to have a bag in here, and then they're going to have this thing called the locker. Generally, in this game, you'll have a starship or a base or something, and you can leave stuff behind.
Mm-hmm.
And the locker is just what is in that place. If you have multiple places you can leave things, you'll end up with multiple of these lockers. Oh, you got kicked.
Well,
Probably a ping issue.
probably. It was reading high ping for me there for a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't even started loading the maps yet, so that's worrying.
It happens. So where I am, whenever at certain times, the internet provider shifts how they're providing.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense. So it can cause things to disconnect and have issues. I'm also, because I only have half the power to my house is currently out, because it's just the way the street power is set. I actually have 2 power supplies that feed in. So I have my backup internet modem running, not my primary.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really weird system. See if it will let me in yet. Let me go and see what's going on with internet. I also know that I do get some ping drop because I have to run an extension cable from the router to my computer. So I have a 50-foot Ethernet cable that's providing my internet. So I do have some ping drop over that.
Still better than wireless.
Yeah. Steam PTP session failed. I think I'm going to need a restart Tabletop Simulator.
Just throw that out there. It's unlikely anyone's going to have time to do it, but I'll put a post up there in the tabletop thing, see if anyone wants to jump in.
Hopefully this will get working for me properly.
Well, tabletop
Yeah,
simulator's always finicky.
Yeah, I probably got about 2 or 3 hours before I have to be off and be getting to bed so I can get some sleep before work tomorrow.
It shouldn't take that long. Assuming we can get rolling, all we're going to do is go over the basics. How the dice work, how your turns work. You said you like combat, so we'll probably do a couple of different kinds of encounters. The hardest...
This guy...
Go ahead.
Yeah, right now I don't have any equipment or anything selected for him, so I don't know what the various equipments do and how they work either.
Yep, I'll throw some of that out too.
God. So this is some sort of error on my end. It's telling me that I can't connect to something the second I load up tabletop.
IRQ?
Hmm?
Is it IRQ?
trying to pull this up to see what exactly it said. Cannot connect with IRC geekshed.net.
Yeah, IRC, that's what it is. So that usually indicates that Tabletop Simulator servers are actually having an issue, which is interesting because I'm still in the game.
I'm on EU servers, not NA servers.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe I can get it to change what servers it's connecting me to.
David? Oh, that's
Yeah,
right. You guys don't play the other game on Tabletop Simulator. What do you use, Roll20?
Yes. And there have been some EU servers versus American server issues on that before, too. Oh, shit. I didn't do that right.
Oh, we're restarting money. This would be a good opportunity for me to change all the money over to the tall stick things I wanted to use.
Where is that VPN at? There it is. Okay. Come on. You can do it, computer. There we go. Okay, so that's now on. So now my computer thinks I'm in the US. Gotta love these backdoor tricks, right?
We have VPNs. The most useful cheat to get through things like Netflix.
I mean, yes, but to be able to actually log on when your servers are crashing in the EU and connect to US servers. Netflix block walls aren't that bad normally. At least right now, that's not what I use them for, because most of my stuff's just on the Italian stuff anyway, which gives more options. Close that to play. Let's see if this works this time.
That's weird. Maybe it's because they're locked.
So what platform do you stream across?
Twitch.
Okay.
We're not real big or anything. It's just mostly friends. I've got like 10 followers. I'm real small time.
I mean, it all starts somewhere. There you go. It's let me in now.
There we go. Welcome back.
Yep. Now it's just going to take 10 minutes to load. Oh, let's choose a color. There we go.
So
Oh, that's loading a lot faster.
this is one of the bigger tables that we've used. So it's a good test for your ping problems. But
Right now it's telling me that I'm getting 299.
yeah,
So
you're
that's going through VPN.
yeah you're 42% loaded. You're doing okay. Sounds like you're...
Sorry, I'm drinking
I was about to say,
water.
sounds like you're filling a fish tank over there.
No, I have a really sensitive mic, and I actually have the sensitivity turned down as far as possible right now.
Yeah, I've got a similar problem. Everyone's always like, we can hear your clicking, because I use one of the old Logitech MX 518s. The old G series is what it really is. But I love this mouse, and I've had it forever, and I refuse to get rid of it. But it's right underneath my super sensitive mic, so whenever I'm playing games that require a lot of clicking, like when we play Among Us, I constantly hear people say, we can hear you frantically clicking trying to kill us. So...
Yeah. I actually had to enable push to talk for my Among Us for the same thing, because I have a touch screen, but my mic is so sensitive that I wasn't paying attention one day, and they heard when I tapped the screen for certain things. Mm-hmm. So someone's like, yeah, you were faking this task because you never tapped your screen. What? That was not how I expected to get caught.
I mean, I've played with my son a couple times, and I've caught him because of the tone of his voice. I've been like, I can tell you're lying. And he's like, that's not fair.
87. Hey, my ping actually went down. It looks like some of the shader assets aren't loading correctly for me.
That's fine. You're going to get a bunch of errors every time you log in. Some of the asset packs are not quite perfect, and it is beyond my technical capability to fix them.
I don't have the time to figure it out, or I would for you.
Well, that's kind of
like
that's kind of where I'm at too. Like,
10.
I'm probably capable of doing it.
Yeah, 10 of the shaders didn't load for me.
Yeah, and you'll find that it doesn't really affect anything either. All right.
Show me at 100%.
Yep, looks like you're loaded in, but you do have a pretty high ping, so let's wait for that to come down a little bit.
That's not going to come down.
Okay. I'm going to try to load a map, and let's see what it does to your computer.
My ping went down.
We're not loaded yet.
No, like it started loading and my ping went from 2-something to 30-something for a second.
Mm-hmm.
How many maps are going to pop up?
So I use a system called One World where you cycle through, like I have a control panel where I can cycle through the maps. And the map you see on the ground isn't always actually part of the actual map you're going to see when it's done loading. You're going to see it's going to actually build a model here. This is one of the medium intensity maps. It's only about 200 items.
This is a really integrated map.
This one's medium complicated. I have some that are much more complicated, but I was scared that I would auto-eject you if I tried to load one of the... Like, I've got some that have, like, particle effects, and, like, when you had a trap in this, it isn't just a matter of, okay, I describe the trap to you. Sometimes I click a thing and stuff happens on the map.
Very nice.
Yep.
So 99%, my ping didn't die.
It's good. So this used to be the home of one of these groups that they were playing. They got bombed by the Imperials, and this was pretty much the last time they saw it. But we're going to use it as a training map.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we're going to need a Wookiee token. Oh man, you can actually do that. That's going to make Zach super jealous. He couldn't do that quite properly. Where is
I can actually, like, me and a bunch of my friends in high school actually, like, broke down various parts of the Wookiee languages from Star Wars that was out at the time and actually figured out phrases and stuff like that they associate it with certain things.
Alright.
So is that me?
That's going to be you today.
Woot.
Got a slight freeze there. There it goes. Okay, so I'm going to do most of this very meta because we're learning the game system. I'm not trying to tell a story. But normally, I'll give you an introduction and a session of where you guys are. I'll ask one of you to recap how you remember things happening from your player's perspective, and then I'll have the other players do like a round table where you guys have a conversation about...
Fill in the blanks.
Yes, fill in the blanks. Where are you? What are you doing? So on and so forth. Really standard RPG stuff. Then we'll move on to what do you guys want to do today? And usually you have some overarching objective, and I'll throw little pieces of salt in there. Once again, pretty standard fare. When you are... Let's got another freeze again. When you are playing the game, have you learned how the dice work yet?
I've not played with the dice in here yet. I know that there are different size of dice and the number depending on your stats and proficiencies.
Okay.
I don't know what they all are and what they mean.
Okay, well, let's work on that first. So, the very basics are, you have two different sets of dice. You have your opposition dice and your dice. So your dice are these ones on top, your yellow, green, and blue up here that are your proficiency, ability, and boost. And you'll see that they correlate to your skills on your character sheet. So your ability dice, your green dice, your triangles, they'll usually be directly correlated to your...
Stat.
Yes, your statistics that go with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, those don't really change unless you get an upgrade to the point where you need another one. Proficiencies are the yellows, and those generally represent your ranks until you run out. Like if you were to upgrade athletics to 4 yellows and then upgrade it again, it would then be 4 yellows and a green.
Makes sense.
So
you just gradually add on, making your dice stronger and better.
Yes, that is how you do this. And you'll find that the more complicated a task is, the more opposition dice you'll get, but that can also depend on how proficient you are at a task. So let's say, for instance, let's say you make this a melee character, and you have your signature weapon, you have a vibro axe that you've used, and then during some fight you end up with a weapon you haven't used before, but is not something completely foreign to you. I might upgrade the difficulty of using that because you're not familiar with it, and that would make a normal like 2 purple or 2 difficulty check a 1 difficulty and 1 challenge or 1 red check. These have and this is like a balancing act you'll see a lot. As a melee character, one of the things you'll see as a melee character is almost all of your checks will start as 2 purples. It's one of the things that makes it easier to learn the melee character, is that the difficulties don't change except for your adversaries. As where if you are shooting, the further away you are, they go up, and then there's all sorts of shenanigans with like what attachments and such you put them in and how well you can see. So we'll talk about despairs and triumphs here, and then we'll talk about advantages and... well, these don't have the one where I can force them to a certain setting. Let me add some of these and pull them over. There we go. Rotation value. I think it's 8. Nope, that's not it. 7? Nope. 6. 5. 4. It's 4. Okay, so this symbol is a triumph. This mechanically counts as both a success and a advantage. Okay.
Hold on. I'm zooming in so I can see it. Okay.
So this mechanically counts as a success and a advantage, but it's so much more than that. So this is the equivalent of a natural 20. This is your critical success, and one of the things that will allow you to do, amongst other things, is automatically crit. Now, if you choose to use it to automatically crit, you do use your triumph, so it's like a point you spent. But you can also use it to do a number of other things, and it doesn't have to be related to what you were doing there exactly per se. So if you roll a triumph on a combat check, and you know you've done enough damage to kill the opponent in front of you, but there are 4 more coming. You can say something to the effect of, can I use my triumph to go ahead and swing through the door lock and cause the door to close between the 2 of us, therefore shutting off those other 4 opponents that would come towards you. Advantage is used the same way, but a triumph is a much bigger version of that. The alternate
advantage, you can do something a little different. Advantage or triumph, that you can kind of use it as a way to do something extreme.
Yes, extreme.
Out of.
Well, I wouldn't call it extreme, but extraordinary. Extreme comes in when we get to Destiny tokens, and we'll talk about Destiny tokens later on. So the opposite of that is your critical failure, which on the red dice you'll see this symbol. Mm-hmm. That is your natural 1.
Okay.
Now, usually the way I play it, because Edge of the Empire is much more interactive than D&D is, I don't usually just tell you how these work out. With your advantages and your triumphs, I almost always ask the player, how would you like to spend your advantage or your triumph? And you tell me something. And most of the time, these will be really standard answers. So your advantages will be stuff like, I want to recover strain, or, I want to give setbacks or something. But if you give me a really elaborate role-play-esque description, then I'm much more likely to allow you to use those advantages for something more important or better. Your description and how well you tell me things are happening has a huge effect on how effective I allow those to be. Now,
Makes sense. The
red dice, the purple dice, and the black dice, I tend to, as the GM, tell you what those did. However, every once in a while, a player will, like especially Jeremy, he's famous for giving himself more severe penalties than I would have given him. And I appreciate that as a GM to the point where, like, I soften those blows and I make it a little bit easier on him when he does that than he would have otherwise done. But I appreciate that he understands that we're telling a story here. He's not playing versus me, and therefore, the disadvantages, the ups and downs are all part of the game. So if you want to step in and say, hey, this is how I think this despair should go, I'm very likely, as long as it's fair, to go ahead and take it. If it's too severe, don't be worried that I'm gonna mess you up if it's too severe, because I will, like I do with Jeremy, step in and soften it. I'm not going to let you take a more significant impact than you should have.
For me, it will probably be something similar to what I do in other things, where I'm like, I'd be like, oh no, I just did this to myself, probably.
Yes. David has learned when he's playing a gunslinger in the last campaign, and almost every despair he rolled resulted in one of his guns being destroyed. So he rolled a despair in one map. He rolled a triumph and a despair, and he rolled threats, and he succeeded on the check. And it was just this just shotgun all over the board. So what ended up happening was he was like, okay, the despair is going to be my guns are going to explode. I already know that. So can I use my advantages to throw the guns at the bad guys before they explode? And I was like, yes, you absolutely can do that.
I know I'm going to have a problem here, so can I just use the problem to my advantage?
Yeah, and it worked out great. So, of course, he did very effectively dispatch some bad guys, and then the gunslinger doesn't have guns. So it was still a despair. It was still a problem for him to deal with. But that's the kind of thing.
Something out of the problem.
Yes, and that's kind of what I'm looking for when you guys are participating with it. So
100%, I understand that.
Let's get some cards out so you can see some weapons. So
just to give you the idea of what I had when I made this character, I wanted him to be the guy who kicks in the door with the heavy gun, starts shooting while walking in, drops the gun, starts either punching or pulls out something and chops them up, and then when all the dust is settled, he figures out what was actually happening.
So every character David's ever rolled. Got it.
I hadn't thought of that, but I've only seen one character that's not like that, and it was we changed the character to not be like that because of the way my character started to check his character.
So I prefer to play, I guess the D&D equivalent is the Bard. the buffing character that's not really combat, but helps the other players be more effective. And in this game, there's a class called Commander that you can play that does a lot of that. And David tried to play one, and he's like, I see how it can be broken, but he's like, I just can't get in the mindset of playing that kind of character. And it was very entertaining to watch.
So the closest I come to a RP meta is I am the extravagant, explosive magic user normally.
Okay.
I am the guy who either uses my magic to manipulate others, figure out what's happening around me, or make big booms. And if I can do all three at the same time, all the better.
Okay. Closest to magic in Star Wars is obviously the Force, and I often discourage new players from taking on Force users initially. But I do think you will have a lot of fun. You will have a lot of fun down the road doing that, but it is, like, everything I'm going to be teaching you for the basics is multiplied by 10 as soon as you add Force powers. And it gets to be complicated.
I didn't really touch it.
Yeah.
I figured, just like when I started D&D, magic was something I watched while I played with martial classes until I understood it enough to play it. Yeah, I'm probably going to do about the same.
It's a good approach. So, let's look. We talked about advantages and triumphs and how they can be used narratively. Let's talk about how they can be used mechanically. So over here, you'll see a melee weapon and a ranged weapon. And there's going to be all sorts of stats on these cards. Incidentally, if you have this weapon, this is the card that'll be in your inventory, and this is how you keep track of it. You can right-click on them and go type things in description underneath the title. And that's usually where you'll keep things like modifications you've added to it, or if it gets damaged, because make no mistake, I'm going to be keeping track of how damaged your weapon is. It's one of the things I do keep track of. And if you don't repair it in between sessions, and then it gets damaged to the point of being inoperable or broken, then you're going to lose the weapon, as we're much cheaper to repair it in between sessions. Just as a heads up, that is something I keep track of.
Okay. Easy there.
So, you'll see that it has a critical rating. That's not how much damage it does for critical. That's how many advantages you need to trigger a critical.
Okay.
The next thing over is your encumbrance. Your encumbrance is how much it weighs. And that's...
Okay, and what is your encumbrance counted against?
Do you mean, like, as far as what strength is? It's brawn. Brawn is how much? There's a bunch of other factors, though. So your encumbrance threshold is 9, which it should be high because you're a Wookiee. And there's a bunch of different factors for it. I can't remember the formula off the top of my head.
I'm trying to see. Oh, there it is. Haha, found it.
But there are backpacks and stuff that will increase it as well. Now, I have a couple of house rules. One of which is, because someone's going to do this and you're going to want to do it, if you're using a jetpack, you can't have a backpack. Simple logic being that they take up the same slot. I will let you use belts and bandoliers, but
That's why I was thinking, like, what about a bandolier or satchel?
Yes, I will let you use belts and bandoliers and satchels, as long as you can logically explain how it's set up. So I do want you to keep that in mind. And the way that David deals with that is he just uses jet boots instead of a jet pack. The trade-off of jet boots is that they only have 3 rounds of endurance. Most of the time it's not an issue for him because he mostly just uses them to propel himself into the enemy with a melee weapon. So it's not usually an issue for him.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking about it logically, if you're wearing a backpack over a jetpack and you fire the jetpack, you're going to burn the backpack straps and you lose your backpack.
Yep. So it's a quick thing on encumbrance. Hard points, the next tick over, is the number of attachments you can put on it. You'll be a couple sessions in before you really get to attachments. But attachments can dramatically change this weapon, and Edge of the Empire is definitely one of those things where, like, all the cards start out generic, and then you start adding your own little touches on them with attachments, and they become things completely different. And rarity is how rare they are in the world from a scale of 1 to 10. It's really a scale of 1 to 9, because 10 is non-existent. 9 is one of a kind. 8 is, extraordinarily rare, so on and so forth. Generally, anything 5 and below is something that I consider to be somewhat common. Like this being a 5, you may have to shop around to find one of these Vibroaxes, but you'd still be able to find one. On any civilized world, anyway. as where this rarity
But
8...
meanwhile, the light bow would be a harder thing to find.
Yes, I was about to get into that. So, like, the light bow is something that you may not be able to find necessarily on your average world. You may have to go seek that out.
You might need to go to a planet like Kashyyyk or something where they're a commonly used weapon.
So that's actually a bowcaster. Light bows are laser versions of the bowcaster. They're only slightly different. Bowcaster is...
But the thought is the same.
Yes, you'd have to seek out a place where it was. That's correct. So, where to go from here? Probably have you do a couple rolls would be the next most logical step. Oh, we need to talk about criticals too, but we can do that when we talk about some rolls. So, let me pull some characters. These two guys probably do. We'll just grab these two and put them in the streets. For whatever reason, you and these guys are going to have a disagreement. We're going to talk about range bands, and we're going to talk about combat.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I've done several different methods on Tabletop Simulator of doing range bands, but the most important thing to know is that in the Fantasy Flight Games Edge of the Empire system as a whole, range bands are a abstract. So they describe the range band as engaged is touching distance, short is talking distance, medium is yelling distance, and long range is beyond that. And that's kind of the description they give you, which is a terrible, terrible description as a GM to try to work out how far away is each of those range bands. So you often hear one of the most common questions in a combat scenario that will be asked to me is how far away are these people in range bands? And because you can't just look at the map and tell. Now, sometimes when in certain maps, we'll use, if you hold on tab, you'll see you have a measuring tool, and that you can snap into different things and get different measurements. I will allow players to use that in some maps and say that this long is short and this long is medium range, etc., etc., etc. But I often don't do that. Yes, you also use tapping the tab button gives you ping, which you can use to point at things for the other players. We use that a lot.
I was trying to ping and drag, and my computer just ran slow enough that became a ping.
Yeah. Okay, well, that might be a thing. M, if you hold it down, does your magnification.
Mm-hmm.
Left alt will pop something out so you can look at it. Okay. So, let me pull some stat cards. I'm going to pull stat cards you can see for these characters. Normally, I keep your opponent's stat cards hidden. My reasoning for this is I will make little notes on them where I've changed the stats, and I don't like to argue with the players about why I've changed those stats. I don't think anyone would actually argue with me, but it can make people salty.
I'm a GM, I understand.
Yeah. So, let me copy this out.
You can ask David about some of the things I've modified that he's come across that are absolutely horrifying once I modify them.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. David's the reason I have to modify most of these. So, alright, so here's a... Put it where the light is normal. So here's just a card for a couple of minions. Enemies come in 3 different flavors. Actually, they come in 4 different flavors, but that's more advanced. They come in 3 different flavors by default. Minion, Rival, and Nemesis. Minions are your lowest level baddies. They're the people you mow down with impunity. That's what this card is for. You'll notice that under Strain Threshold it says Minions, because Minions don't get Strain Threshold. Rivals are supposed to be the rival of the player. They have some attributes from Minions, and they have some attributes from Nemesis. They're in between. They take criticals normally, but they tend to have lower hit points capabilities. And as a rule, they don't die as easy, but they're also not that impressive in what they can do to you. And then there are Nemesis. Nemesises are the big bads. They're supposed to be the people that can, if there's 4 players, can give the 4 players a legitimate problem by himself. I have been known to throw 3 or 4 Nemesises at the current party and still have them take them down without having anyone in danger of dying. And that's mostly due to the fact that David min-maxes his character pretty significantly. So these guys, they're going to be minions, and we're going to have you say how you would like to do it, and then we're going to walk through how you would mechanically do it.
Okay, and just to confirm, the guys you're having me go up against are these guys up here, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, and I have the 2 weapon cards that you gave me over here?
Sure. They're already out, so let's start with those.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm just reading.
No, take your time.
Okay, so what is the various things let's talk about, like Pierce, Vicious, the Blast,
Yeah,
the slow firing, like what does that all mean?
The qualities, that's really good questions. Okay, so Pierce, you'll notice that you have Soak, and that we haven't talked about Soak. Soak's really important. That leads us to something else. So Soak is the amount of damage you can take every turn. That, like, if I shoot you for 10 damage, you take 4 off of it automatically every time you're shot. You take off that 4 damage, and that never diminishes. That's just what it is. The only way it can be diminished is if you're wearing a piece of armor that gives you extra Soak, and most of it will, and I sunder that armor, then you have to take that armor point off of your Soak because the weapon or the armor's been destroyed. So that's the only time you'll ever have to worry about it. But as a rule, Soak is just, damage that you can just negate. Now, Pierce is what it sounds like. It bypasses armor. Therefore, you would only take 2 Soak against that attack. So, it's if it hits you for 10, you'd still take 8. Sunder has to be activated, even though it's a passive. So, rules as written, Sunder is a passive ability. Yet, it requires advantage to trigger it. So it's not really a passive ability. It's an active ability because you have to trigger it. You can choose to take the Vibroaxe and sunder a weapon or armor that the enemy is using, doing damage and damaging it by 1 step. This usually is A, at the expense of doing damage to the actual person, unless it's armor, in which case that becomes a gray area. And B, you need 2 advantage to trigger it on top of a successful hit. Most of my players avoid sundering something unless that's something that's, like, it has to be a very specific scenario, like an E-Web heavy blaster. Like if someone's setting up the equivalent of a machine gun is about to mow the party down, they will immediately say, no, I want to shoot that thing and sunder it, if they have
Makes
this
sense.
sunder capability. Vicious is part of, so a Vicious 3 is plus 30 to your critical. So for every level of Vicious, you add 10 to the critical roll if you roll a critical with this thing. And you'll notice that most melee weapons, including the Vibroaxe, critical on an insanely low number. That leads to another house rule. I don't let you take your critical rating below 2 on anything. This is because this actually wasn't David's fault. This is one of the few house rules I made that wasn't because of David. Jeremy figured out he could get his critical rating to 0. And he's like, so does that mean that I can just critical every time I hit? And I'm like, of course that's not what it means. He's like, what about 1 advantage? And I'm like, look, we're going to have to establish some ground rules here, and this is going to be one of them. So I have a house rule where you can only get your critical rating down to 2. So this Vibroaxe, by default, already comes with as good of a critical rating as it can have. And that means that when you're looking at attachments, don't do an attachment that brings a critical rating down because it's not going to help you.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
Now we'll move on to the light bow. The light bow has blast 4. Triggered, you'll notice that all grenades have blast. This weapon also has blast. So if you successfully hit, that first part is important, and you want to spend 2 advantage, you can trigger blast. And what it does is, let's say you hit for the 11 damage. When you trigger blast, that 4 gets added on to the initial target. So the person you shot with it now takes 15 damage. And anyone who's standing in engaged range with them, friend or foe, takes 4 damage. So it's what it sounds like. Knockdown also takes 2 advantage. So let's say you don't want to trigger blast because your buddy's like right on him with a sword. You trigger knockdown and you shoot this person
Puts him on his ass.
Puts him on his ass, and now he's standing in front of or he's laying on his ass in front of a melee character. Laying down in this game has very similar rules to D&D. If you're laying down, you're harder to shoot but easier to melee. So if someone's on the ground and you have a sword or a spear, you're going to take advantages hitting them. That's where if they're laying down and you're trying to shoot them, you're going to take disadvantages hitting them. We already went over Pierce, so you know what that is. Slow firing is, it can only be fired every other round. This is generally in This is generally for a weapon that has to be reloaded. But sometimes it's for a weapon that needs to cool down or something. With the light bow, I would, as a GM, say that it fires such a hot array of laser that the barrel has to cool in between shots.
Which actually it talks about how it's auto-loading and it cocks and fires with every pull the trigger, emitting a powerful charge,
Yeah.
so that would make sense.
Yeah. And you'll find that often, like, why it's slow firing is something that I'll throw some flavor in. But I throw flavor like that in because, let's say, for instance, I won't usually tell you this as a player, but I throw out that description where I said it's red hot after it fires. So if you're in a close combat scenario and you say, this thing's red hot, I've just fired it, I want to smack my opponent with it for burn damage. I'll let it do burn damage. Yeah, because you've made a logical leap that makes sense. Now, I will make you roll like advantage. I will still make you roll a check for it, but I will let the effect happen because it helps the narrative as well as everything else. And I overall am a storyteller and want to tell this story, but I want it to look like an episode of Clone Wars or a scene from the movies. I want it to feel like you've played through a Star Wars movie, a good one, not one that Disney made. Yeah.
Ooh.
So, yeah, that's right. Go ahead, stream. Give me some salt. So
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I will say Star Wars or Disney has done much better with shows than with movies.
Absolutely. I love The Mandalorian. I think they did really good with The Mandalorian. I think they did really good with Rebels. But the reason for that is because the higher-ups at Disney and Lucasfilm are not involved. Those are the peon people who actually like Star Wars making those.
But anyway.
So that goes through all the ones that are here. You will find that there are other effects that are available, but those are the majority you'll come across.
I assumed as much.
You also see that there's range bands, what skill it uses, and what category it's in, and those change various things you're using. Now, from as far away as you are, for story purposes, I'm going to dictate that you are at short range. In a turn...
Okay, so I am...
Go ahead.
Okay, so right now, being at short range, I would be able to hit with the longbow, but I would not be able to hit with the cutter because I'm not in melee, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So, if you want to get into engage range where you can use the melee, you have to take a maneuver to step in from short range to engage range. Now, you get one maneuver and one action by default in your turn. You can get two maneuvers two different ways. You can either downgrade your action to a maneuver, or you can take two strain, and you can have two maneuvers and an action. You can never, under any circumstances, have more than two maneuvers in a round. That's a hard rule, so you've got to keep that in mind.
Okay. And switching between weapons, what does that count as?
Managing your gear is a maneuver. There are lots of things you can do to get that down, though. For instance, David was playing Jane, whatever his last name was, and he was a gunslinger. And he had special abilities and special holsters that allowed him to draw and holster his weapons as incidentals, which allowed him to do a lot of bypassing of that particular rule. It was very convenient during quick draw scenarios.
Makes sense. So, if I'm tracking this right, and I'm thinking about this properly, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and shoot the guy on the left with my longbow. Or light bow, sorry. And then I'd want to move into the melee range. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take the two strain so I can kind of like on the sling that I'd have the light bow on, drop it and pull out the vibro blade or vibro axe with my other maneuver.
So mechanically, the way you'd have to do this, because an action is end your turn automatically except for one circumstance. And shooting is an action. However, if you roll two advantages when you shoot something and you have a maneuver available, you may then use that maneuver. It's shoot and scoot, basically, but you have to roll advantages to do it. Matt, who is Ghost Logic, who is our guy that plays the red character Sorry, the white character. Which is, last time it was a droid and then later on a Zabrak. He really is fond of shoot and scoot. And he will take that gamble more often than not. And more often than not, it works for him. And he's able to shoot and then get behind cover and do maneuvers just like you described. But he knows it's a gamble, and when it doesn't work, he's often been left standing right in front of the enemy, open to be fired at. So it's a tactical trade-off. Does usually work, at least later on with advanced characters. Earlier on, you're going to have fewer dice, so let's talk about your dice pool. So, to shoot at short range against these characters is only 1 purple. So...
Yep. And it's a heavy weapon, so I should have 1 yellow and 2 green?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So, we're going to go over here to the dice roller. We use an automated dice roller. Actually, you know what? We normally do, but let's go ahead and not use the automated dice roller so we can do the math ourselves. Just for training purposes. Okay. 9 times out of 10, we're going to use the automated dice roller. So, you have 1 yellow, 2 greens, right?
Yep.
1 yellow, 2 greens. Your difficulty is 1 purple. Okay. So, this would be your dice pool right here. So you go ahead and roll that for your shot.
Okay. Is there a way for me to highlight them all and roll? Oh,
yep.
There we go.
You can drag select.
And then...
the R key rolls them.
Okay. So yours is set for an R. There they go.
All right. So that's a lot of success. Let's work this all out. So
that should be... I'm not sure how that equates out.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure what the purple die is. So I know it's 6 success versus, I think, 1 failure and something else on the purple die.
Yep, we're going to go over that. Okay, so it's basic math. So the symbols on here are, the triangle is a failure, and the circular looking thing is a threat. So this little winged with a dot thing in it on the side of this dice, that's an advantage. Advantages and threats cancel each other out, and successes and failures cancel each other out. So the math for this, you have 1 failure, so you'd subtract that from your successes, so you'd have 5 successes with 1 threat. 1 threat is not very much. 9 times out of 10, when you get 1 threat, I'm going to be like, take a point of strain, or I'm going to say something really minor happens. In this case, your 1 threat, because you wanted to shoot and scoot, is going to be that you don't get to shoot and scoot. Like, you're not going to take any different stuff. I'm just not going to let you do it. It takes you a little bit longer to aim than you thought it would, and by the time you pull off the shot, more time has passed than you wanted. Now, let's talk about your damage. So you pulled up your light bow and you shot. Every success that is not canceled, so your 5 successes that aren't canceled there, get added to the damage of the weapon.
So I just did 16 damage.
You just did 16 damage. Now, when you look over at this card, you're going to see that he's got a soak of 4, so that brings it down to 12. And then he's got 5 hit points.
So I just mowed him down.
Yes, you did. In fact, if they were both part of one minion group, which they often will be when you play, you did. So you still had more than 10 left over, so you'd actually get both of them.
Okay.
So it'd be like a double pull, and you'd knock them both down. We're not going to do that this time because I want to also get you to do melee and stuff. But you're going to say you mow the first guy down. He just takes 1 to the face, and he's done. Often with the tokens that are like that one, I will paint them red when they're dead. But with other tokens, I'll flip them over and stuff like that. And some of them are animated and actually have effects. In fact, I'll throw a couple of those in for lulz. Because I don't need these guys anymore, and I was cleaning up the table anyway. These just come with Tabletop Simulator. That's why they look like they're rogues. It's because they are rogues. Okay, so now they're going to get a turn. Now minions, when they're in a group, get upgraded attacks. You'll notice, and you're not going to see this card normally, but it's still kind of important that you understand how it works. They have skills, and you'll notice it doesn't tell you how many ranks they've got in those skills. That seems odd, doesn't it? They get 1 rank. What?
I figured it was a default number unless it said otherwise.
So No, it's per extra person. So for a minion group of 2, they get 1 rank in each of these. For a minion group of 3, they get 2 ranks in each of these. It's for every...
Gotcha.
They get a rank for every person after 1. So a 5-person minion group can be pretty dangerous, even to a higher level player. For a base level character that's just rolled like yours is, I wouldn't do more than a minion group of 3 normally. But it just depends on the scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's let this guy... This guy's his own minion group, so he doesn't get any upgrades and skills, so he just has his agility. He's going to shoot his heavy blaster pistol at you. I will use the... No, I'm going to use the dice again so that we can look at more rolls and do the math.
Mm-hmm.
So he has the same difficulty you had because you guys are the same distance away. He only has 3 greens because he has 3 agility. I'm going to go ahead and roll it. Okay. So what does this check say?
Okay, so that says he has 4 successes against 2 of the critical fails. I can't remember what they're called.
2 of the threats.
Threats,
So
there you go.
So it's not critical fail until he gets
Until he gets the big
despair.
threat.
Yeah. So
So it's 4 success, 2 2
threat.
threat.
Yeah. So that's 7 plus 4. So he did 11 damage to you. So go ahead and take your soak out
And
of
I
that.
soak 4 of that,
Yep.
so I will only take 5.
Yep. Now let's talk about taking damage. I don't have your counters set up yet on this table. So we're going to use these right here. So generally use red as health, blue as strain, and then the green is... You can use it for whatever you want. By default, it's however many stim packs you've used this session. But you can use a green one for whatever you want. But I like you to use the red for health and the blue for strain so that I as a GM can see how many you've taken up front. You can count up or down. The book, going by the book, you count up. So going by the book, you'd actually put the damage you've taken on there, not how many you have left.
Okay.
And I do prefer it that way, but there's no wrong way to do it. If you want to count down, if you're more comfortable with that, I'm okay with that.
I'm fine either way. As my being a GM thing, I prefer to see what they have left, not what's already been done.
Yep.
But either way is fine with me.
That's how I started out too, but there was so much confusion because the way the book is written, and as we play more, you'll see why it's done like this. It actually becomes really confusing counting down later because of the way the rules and the criticals are written. Because it'll say add
Gotcha.
points, and what it really means is take them
Well.
away. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I believe something happened here.
Are you lagged?
So I would have suffered wounds, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So now, being a Wookiee, that means that my melee has gone up +1.
Yes, and if you take a critical, it'll go to +2, which is obvious.
Yes.
It's obviously a trade-off because if you take a really minor critical, that's super helpful because you're like, oh yeah, you shot my gun out of my hand, but I've got this big axe, and now it hurts more when I hit you. That's the best case scenario, right? It could also be bad in that, okay, yeah, I do +2 damage if I could get up off the ground because my legs just got shut out from under me. So, and criticals have that range.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's go on to it being your turn again. And let's say you want to melee this time, so we can go on to that part.
Okay, so I'd already have my axe in my hand. So my maneuver would be to move myself up here.
Yep, you move into
So I'm
engage
right in
range.
front of him.
Yep,
Yep. And then I'd use my attack,
okay,
or my action to hit him.
yes.
And so for me, we're in engage range, so no purple die, correct?
No, so it's 2 purple dice to melee. So it's always, that's why melee's easier.
Melee versus melee is...
Yes, is
purple
always 2 purple dice. Now, you'll notice that it
Gotcha.
says melee versus ranged is 2 purple dice, but it's got that square next to it.
yeah.
We're going to go ahead and say he's got his ranged weapon out. Because they were shooting. He just shot you, right? He's got his heavy blaster
Yeah.
out. So you take a boost dice. That's what that is right there. And that is a rule that we often forget here because we get so many boost dice. We forget to add that extra one. But if you're meleeing someone with their gun out, you take an extra blue dice on top of your check to hit him.
Okay. So fighting this guy, what I would have is the 1 boost dice, a yellow dice, and 3 green dice. Versus his 2 purple dice.
Okay, so basically that. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, now, hold on a second. Well, no, let's go ahead and do this first, and then I'll get into the more advanced changing the checks in a minute. We'll do it one step at a time. I'm just trying to keep an eye on the time here, because I know you only got a couple hours.
Oh, we're still fine. Okay, so this looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? 5 of the
Advantages.
advantages.
Mm-hmm.
2 or 4 advantages overall. 2 successes overall. And that's it.
Okay. What can you tell me about that check from what we've already talked about?
So, trying to see. So a 2 to hit, which, so I would crit.
Yes, that's the most important part.
Yep. And plus 3 damage, plus my base brawn, which is 4 if I remember correctly. 2 of which is pure soak will go past his soak.
It'll go past 2 of his soak.
2 of his soak, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So he'll still absorb 2 of it, so he will take 5.
Yep. Okay, that he would take 5,
And then
except
the crit.
Yeah, the critical is the important
Yeah,
part.
and then the crit. And I'm not 100% sure if crit just doubles it or what it does. We didn't go into that.
Yep. Well, we're about to. So on a minion, critical is an instant kill. And if he's in a minion group, you would instant kill the first one, and then the second one would take all the damage you just described, which I'm pretty sure would just kill another one. So you'd get 2. But because we want to learn criticals, let's say, for instance, that this guy was a rival and took criticals like anyone else. This is also the way you will take criticals when you take them. So I'll say, roll your favorite dice. Every player at my table hates to hear me say that. What I'm talking about are these 2 dice right here, which cumulatively give you a basically D100. So you roll your percentile and your number. Mm-hmm. If you don't know how D100s work, and I'm sure you do, the description is actually in the D100 if you hold your mouse over it.
Yeah.
So go ahead and roll that. Normally I'll roll the enemies, but we'll have you do it this time.
Okay, so that would be a 1.
No, you really did roll a 1. Except if we were playing Cthulhu, that would have been badass. But the weapon is vicious 3, so it's not really a 1. It's a 31. Every level of vicious is plus. That's 10.
Yeah,
now
it's plus 10.
Take a minute to look through this deck of cards. Right click and go to search, and you're looking for your critical card on what critical this guy just took. But I also want you to take a minute to look through all the different criticals you can get.
It's taking a minute for it to pull up for me.
That's fine.
Right click and
search.
Okay. Okay, so 151 plus is they're dead.
Just dead. That's right. Now you notice we rolled a D100 for that. So at 151, you have to have
you
higher.
need to have viscous 6 or better.
Or every time you take a critical, it's plus 10 the next critical you take. So if you take 5 criticals, you're already at plus 50, which makes death a very real possibility. It's actually kind of hard to kill in this game. With that said, if you take double your wound threshold, you are also considered dead instantly. However, that's never happened in 3 years of playing this game. So, because the minions don't continue to attack corpses on the ground. So if they knock you unconscious by putting you past your wound threshold, they don't continue shooting you. Therefore, it's never happened, but it can happen. I think it's in there in case you get shot by like a vehicle blaster cannon at point blank range.
Yeah. I mean, there are also sometimes AoE will get thrown by an enemy that will do more damage to you and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Target can no longer see.
Yep. We had a player get that. Actually, it was David. In his very first session as his current gunslinger, he got that critical, which usually. So I let him heal it on the spot because I wasn't sure if it meant it was permanent. And then I went back and did some rule digging, and that critical actually means permanently it's not healable without cybernetic eyes. So just keep that in mind. That critical is you have to replace the actual eyes in order to fix that. Same thing with limbs. There'll be one in there that takes a limb away.
Yeah, I think that was the lame.
Yeah, and it says that it's GM or attacker's choice, but honestly, I have a critical hit location dice, and I just roll that. And that's usually what I go with. Jane he rolled the crotch for one of those criticals, and he now has cybernetic appendages for that character. I can't believe I didn't get it.
Healed or replaced.
Yep.
Suffers one strain. Action increases the difficulty of all skill checks. Jesus.
Yep. There's a permanent one in there. So there's one that permanently degrades your characteristic. We had another.
Yeah, I saw that. That's higher up.
We had another character who was the face of the group and got his presence, which is your talking, knocked down by one because of that. And he was a Toydarian, like the Watto from episode 1. And we role played that as his snout got cut off, and he had to get a cybernetic snout. But now on top of the fact that his snout was gone and he was defaced, but he also lacked confidence. It affected him psychologically because of it. He role played it really well too.
What's disoriented mean?
You will find me cursing often at that particular question. So disoriented is you take a setback to do anything, I believe. But disoriented and stunned, I think, are very similar, and they each reference each other on all the quick sheets. It's not usually that big of a deal. Yeah, disorient, stun are the ones that kind of get me, where they don't have really good descriptions until you get all the way into the book. And I actually have it bookmarked in my core rule book, which I unfortunately don't have laying here with me. But I have it bookmarked because we've had to look it up so many times. But it's just setbacks.
Okay, so for this one, they would be stunned until their next turn.
Yeah, so
Card number 23.
Stunned is the one where they lose. Hold on, I gotta go get the core rule book. I'll be right back.
That's great. I need to take a quick break too. Okay, you back? Sweet, beat him up.
It helps if you unmute yourself.
Am I muted?
That was me. I started talking to a muted microphone. It's all good.
That's why I love I have a flip switch on mine that I use.
Yeah, I've got one too. It's even got a red light on it.
Okay.
I'm looking
So
for
what
it.
does stun do? I imagine stun makes it so they can't use their action or maneuver.
I think that's what it is, and I think it's you don't get a free maneuver, but it could be. So I've got disorient bookmarked.
I feel like that's the more severe one to have what it is.
218. Oh look, I do have a bookmark. The bookmark just slipped in. Okay, it's not staggered, it's stunned, right?
Yes. I believe staggered was loss of maneuver. Until the next turn.
It's loss of maneuver. Staggered is loss of action.
Okay.
Okay, so they lose their maneuver, and it doesn't really matter because this is a training session, but it's a good exercise in looking up the rules, which we do all the time because even after years of playing this, I can't remember crap like that. So
After a few sessions, I get used to it. These things will start popping up, and I'll just start rattling off what they are. It's fine.
Yep. David has his rules that he knows that I'm always like, what was the answer to this question? And he's like, it was this. So we kind of like group remember different things.
Generally, the rule of thumb is if it's a rule that your character triggers a lot, you should know the answer.
Yep, that's definitely how David plays. And I've gotten to the point now with him where, like, I trust him to look at the rules, but I also have to double check sometimes just to make sure that he didn't forget some downside.
Yeah.
But let's see, so he's going to lose his maneuver. So all he has is an action, but you're already there. So he can't pull out his vibro knife because he doesn't have a maneuver. So if you were in his shoes, you'd want to pull out that vibro knife he's carrying and stab back, right? Or you'd want to take a step back so you were in short range again. But he can't do either of those things because he doesn't have maneuver. So all he can do is try to hit you with the butt of his gun, which is a brawl check. Brawl checks are often opposed checks.
So would that be brawl, or would that be the range light versus melee?
So range, well, it depends on how you're running it. If he's trying to shoot you, it's range light versus melee.
Gotcha. Okay.
We could run it like that because that is the more likely scenario.
I definitely would prefer the brawl check.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I was going to go with it. That's one of the reasons I was going to go with it.
I'm just trying to understand what the difference is between the two. That's all it was.
So
my brawl check is on point.
We'll do that one next time. So his skill, being all alone, is just 3 greens. Normally, if you have a maneuver, you can take you can take a maneuver to take aim, basically. So you'll often hear it said, "I take my whole turn to shoot somebody," and then they give themselves a boost dice. What they're mechanically doing is taking their maneuver and aiming.
Makes sense.
So this is 50-50. And he's going to fail miserably. So he's got 2 failures, but he's got 4 advantages. What can he do with 4 advantages? Well, 4 advantages is a pretty decent amount of advantage. So I wouldn't normally go this hard on a rookie, but I'm going to do it anyway. He misses you, but he sets your fur on fire.
That bastard.
Yeah, Wookiees get angry about that. Ask Zach. He was very much having trouble with being set on fire. So we're going to go back to your turn. You've kind of learned the different ins and outs of shooting and meleeing. So how would you like to approach this scenario?
So, putting out the fire on my fur, would that be a maneuver or a action?
Yes. It's a maneuver, but you don't have to roll for it. You generally have to roll for actions, but not for maneuvers. Generally, there are exceptions.
Okay. Understand. So I would look at where he set on fire, pat it out, growl at him, and then swing my axe as hard as I freaking could at him.
Okay. So you can take 2 strain and use the aim maneuver with a melee weapon as well, which it fits the I want to swing as hard as I can. I count that as you want to take strain, take another maneuver, use that maneuver to get a boost dice.
Why is that just going up?
What's just going
Stop. I hit plus twice for strain, and it just kept going up. I'm presuming it's because it kind of has like a double click.
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, lag does funny things in this game. Okay, so it's 2 difficulties to hit him. He still has his gun out, so you'd actually get a boost for that, so you get 2 boosts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then I get my yellow and 3 green.
There you go.
Oh, no, didn't get them all. Let's try it this way. Yeah, there we go. I was trying not to get that red die. Okay, and then roll.
All right. I believe this roll is defined as you fuck his shit up.
Yep, so I have no advantages, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to hit.
Oh, let's talk about a wash. So if you come out to 0 successes, that is still a failure. That is something that one of my players gets hung on a lot because he's like, no, it should be a success, but no, it's still a failure if you get 0 successes. It didn't happen this time, but it's just something I want you to keep in mind as we play.
Yeah.
It's a really hard one to accept.
That would be 5 successes, so I'd be hitting him for 7 or 5 again once I get past his soak.
Okay, so you've got how many successes here? 7?
5.
5?
7, yeah. Or 5, yeah.
Okay, plus 4 is 9. Plus
9.
3
Plus the 3
is 12.
12. Yep, so I'd have 12. He'd soak 2 of it. I'd get through 2 of it because of the pure, so he'd take 10 total.
So, with a minion, that's like you cleave him from head to toe kind of damage.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like we've kind of understanding combat. Trying to think of specific things we haven't covered.
The auto roller.
Well, we haven't done the auto roller. That's true. We can do that. That's easy. But I also want to do something else. Just give me a second. Probably should have just pulled this out of the trash. That would have been easier, because I know there's one in there.
Oh, grenade! Wrong one. That's camera orientation. This is big. All the fun shit. And just so you're aware, we don't have to get through everything tonight. I do have time in the evenings, starting at about noon your time until about 6 p.m. that I can do things during the week. Can you hear me?
But you can't hear me because I'm muted again. Sorry, I had to say something to my kid, and then I forgot to unmute again. What I was saying was, if we're getting close, I lost track of time, so I don't know how close we are to the end of your evening.
We still got another hour and a half.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll probably can get through all the basics in an hour and a half. But we're gonna go over grenades, how medicine and so drugs and medicine. That is something I want to. So I'm going to back you up here. We're going to change the scenario a little bit. Do some GM magic. And we're going to say that you've been jumped by these 2 Valerian cutthroats. You decide you're going to throw a grenade at them. Now, take a minute to look at the grenade and the different types of damage it does. This one's a really simple one.
Blast. So I don't... Blast is... If it hits, it explodes and can do damage to the next thing over. But I forget what triggers it. It has to be, what, an advantage to trigger blast, right?
It's 2 advantages to trigger, and it does everything in the grenade's range. So you'll notice the grenades... Oh, this is a bad grenade to use as an example. Because that grenade has short range for its blast radius, and that is not normal.
But I imagine it kind of relays the same it does for a blaster, where short range, long range, is just how wide of an area it affects.
Oh, sorry. That is how long you can throw it. I forgot. The only one that does short range is the thermal detonator. So this does engage range, blast damage. Sorry. I got confused with something else. If you get a thermal detonator, which we'll get into later if we have time, but is a special weapon, it does special damage.
Okay.
So you can throw it out to short range. That's what it means. So you need 2 advantages to trigger blast. It criticals on 3. It does 12 damage. It's more than enough to take care of these 2 minions standing in front of you. Actually, let's upgrade them to rivals so that we can have a little bit more fun.
And throwing that would be an action, correct?
Yes. Anything you roll for is usually an action. So, let's talk about grenade. It's a light ranged attack. I notice that's a skill you don't have. So you'd be using your base 3.
Yeah.
Furthermore,
Which still isn't bad from what I've seen.
Furthermore, we're going to talk about destiny tokens before I forget.
Okay.
So up here where I'm pinging, you can see it.
Oh, I need to zoom out. Okay.
You'll see that there's 2 types of tokens here, light side and dark side tokens. The player use light side tokens. It's a community resource, so it's the whole party. And the GM uses dark side tokens, and they go back and forth. So if I use a token, you guys get a token. If you use a token, I get a token. In a good game, this should ebb back and forth once or twice. 2 or 3 times is preferable, but usually it's once or twice. The way you do it with the rules is everyone rolls force dice at the beginning of the session, blah, blah, blah. I don't do it that way. I put down the same number of tokens as me plus all the players. So in this case, it would be 5. Or sorry, in this case, it would actually be 6 if everyone shows up. But I think Jeremy's going to be out for a bit. We're going to make it me and you. And then I automatically get 1 dark side token, and for every player that comes, I give a light side token. This avoids us forgetting to roll at the beginning of every session, which we almost always do, and it gives the players the initiative as far as tokens. They get a lot of tokens to start with, which is how I feel it should be, even though it's not technically the rules. So you have your light side token, I have a dark side token. I'm going to use this dark side token and show you one of the things that can be done with it, which is I'm going to upgrade the difficulty of your check by 1. So I basically turned your challenge dice into a red dice. This is the dice that has the despair capability. The reverse can be used. Now you can't do it this turn because only 1 token can be used per round. But if you on the next turn wanted to turn one of your greens into a yellow.
So is that per round or per turn?
So
like if I were to do it on my turn, could someone else do it on their turn?
Yes, you are correct. It is per turn.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That is.
Just want to understand.
Not mess that up. So your skill by default is this. Now I changed my roll. I've now modified my roll by doing something. You can modify your roll. Can you think of a way that you would do that?
Strain?
Yep, you can take 2 strain, upgrade, take the aim maneuver, even with a grenade. That is absolutely a thing you can do. And that's an easy way to do that. So that would give you a little bit of an extra oomph to try to make your check.
Breathe there. And then I do that. And That would be a success. It would be a 3.
Yep.
With nothing extra. So it would just be 3 success.
Yep. Now, you don't have enough to trigger blast, so the grenade is going to go off and take out one of the baddies, but it's not going to blast into the other guy. Now, let's play a little hypothetical scenario. I'm going to use the dice roller. So with the dice roller, it's the same thing as the regular dice. Setbacks are your black ones, challenges are your red ones, difficulties purple, so on and so forth. So here's one of each. So for the roll you just did.
Hit.
Yep. You can hit roll or read. The reason read is there is because sometimes I will say, like let's say you forgot to put a boost dice in, you rolled it and one came up blank. I'll let you re-roll it and then click the read button and it changes that one dice's value because it's written differently. Now, what you just did, you got this one and then that one, and then you're up against just one of these. So go ahead and you click the roll button and do your roll again. We're not really repeating the attack, I just want to show you something. Okay, let's change this to this, and let's add one of these, and change, oh, it fell right on it. Now click read. Okay, these, I hate these, but these are a regular problem that you deal with. Notice that it still says triumphs and despairs, even though you've got one of each, and your logical thinking would probably say that they cancel each other out, but they don't.
No, as you had already talked about, they're 2 separate things that trigger, which is how he knew his guns were going to explode, so he used his triumph to know that and chuck his guns at the enemy.
Exactly. So, in this case, you'd have all sorts of things going on. You are going to hit because you have success. You don't have enough for blast to go off with your one advantage. You can trigger blast with your triumph. Now, this is once again, it's your story as well as everyone else's. You get to say what that advantage and triumph are within reason. I'm kind of an arbiter of it, but you would tell me what the triumph is, and oftentimes I would wait to tell you what the despair is until after you've said that.
After the triumph goes off.
Yeah. But sometimes I'll tell you in advance this is what the despair is going to be.
So I think in this situation, my triumph would be that the blast still goes off.
Okay.
That would just make the logical sense for this triumph.
So what I would usually do as the GM is I'd say, okay, absolutely. So your triumph goes off, and this guy is just shredded by the grenade. But the sound of it alerts his 4 buddies who come running out of the building, and you're now dealing with a bunch more, even though you just took out that guy. Okay, so we've handled that. I think it's time to run away from the bad guys. Let's talk about vehicle combat.
Okay.
I'm throwing a lot at you. Oh wait, first we want to do stim packs and booster blue. I forgot. So a stim pack heals automatically 5 hit points the first time you use it in a session, 4 the second time, 3 the third time, etc., 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 counting down until it doesn't do any more until you don't get any more advantage from it.
Makes sense.
It's per session, and that's important to remember because you can have multiple encounters in a session. Now, a lot of times, if you guys have spent the night, the players will be like, hey, can our stim packs reset? And I'll say yes. However, it is per session, so sometimes I'll be like, no, you're still wounded, and your stim packs still take a limited effect. With that said, you can also be in the middle of an encounter, and we dismiss the session, then we come back a couple weeks later, and then your stim packs magically heal 5 again, because that's the way it's written, and I try to give you as much advantage for that as possible.
Makes sense.
So, right now, let's say your guy would take a stim pack. It's a maneuver. It's actually 2 maneuvers rules is written, but I only make it 1.
Let's appreciate it. Well, it says take 1 maneuver to use it.
Yeah, that's it.
Automatically.
That's if it's in your hand. It's
Gotcha,
it's a maneuver to
maneuver to shoot yourself.
And that's just their way. There's these stupid little pouches that they pretty much put in the game just for stim packs. And rather than make all my players basically add to their inventory that they're carrying these little pouches that are just pockets, I just make it 1 maneuver because I've never encountered a scenario where you'd want that pouch other than pulling out a stim pack. So
Gotcha.
that's how we do it. So you can take your 5 hit points back. It won't matter in a minute anyway.
Oh. Okay.
Let's get your token.
And then.
So what we're going to do is, when I reload maps, you'll notice that you know where the map showed up. When I pack this map, everything that's on there is going to go away. Under normal circumstances. Right now, I'm going to clear it because it's less lag intensive if I just clear it. So we're going to say your guy jumps on one of these vehicles. You can pick one of these vehicles to be your vehicle.
Let's go with the red hot rod.
Okay, flare a swoop. And
probably not the best of those vehicles, but
it's all good. It's not really going to be that important, actually, in the long run. And I do have cards for each of these, but we're going to use some generic stats. We have some Valerian Cutthroats hot rodding on some swoop bikes following you. We're going to pull you. Now notice that when I pull you off, I'm going to put you on this white panel here that has all this other stuff on it. As a general rule, when I'm about to switch maps, everyone needs to pull their token, and I don't do it for you. I rely on everyone else to go grab their tokens and move it to one of these 2 white panels. And these 2 white panels on either side of the table represent whatever vehicles or whatever you're getting into transition to the next map.
Gotcha.
That's just a thing I do because of the way One World works.
I understand.
So now I'm going to flip through a couple different maps as I find us a nice roadway map. Oh, that's probably a good one to use. Let's use that one. I can't remember what's on it, but let's use it. Something's burning on this map. Oh, this is the crash site map. I remember this. This was a fun one. A lot of particles in this map, so how's your lag doing?
I actually can see the flame moving, no problem, fully loaded in.
Good deal. Good deal.
Really, it's just, it takes me a second to do it, and when I interact with something, it's slow. That's all it is. Like, everything else you're doing comes in real time, it's just when I try to do something, it's slow.
Okay.
Because my upload is like kilobytes, but my download is terabytes.
Yeah, my upload.
Terabytes, megablast, like gigablast. So I get I get 2 gig down, like 500 meg up, or something like that. It's ridiculous the disparity between the two. I get less than like 10% of the upload I get compared to my down.
Yeah, that's how mine is too. You can thank Comcast for that. So
mine's actually, the way the internet's set up here is really weird, and I have a fiber coming in, but a non-fiber going out. It's like a Cat 5 or something, or Cat 6 going out.
oh, wow, that is weird.
It's because the way they did the upgrades in the area, this guy said I want really high download speed and paid for really high download speed, but didn't pay for the area to get really high upload speed. So they only upgraded the download speed because that was the cheapest way to do it.
Okay. So you're booking it away from these guys. We're going to do a little bit of vehicle combat. For the sake of argument, your swoop bike is going to have a cannon on it. It wouldn't normally, but for today, it's going to. And you're booking it down this road. Let's go to doing some checks with your planetary piloting. So, planetary versus space piloting. This is a complicated question that generally comes down to what was the vehicle made to operate in, not where are you piloting it. If you were in the Millennium Falcon flying through this atmospheric area, it'd still be a space piloting check. Does that make sense?
Because it's a space vehicle.
Because it's a space vehicle. If you're flying a speeder from one, space station spar to another, still a planetary piloting check.
Okay. Well, for me, they're the same.
Yep. I'm aware.
1 yellow and 2 green for both of them, so that's...
Oh, good. These actually have stats. That's good. Now let's see if I have a Tobin in here with stats. Nope, doesn't have stats. Okay, we're just going to use the generic bike stats then. Alright, so for the sake of keeping things simple, this card is going to be the stats for everyone's bike. So this is what you have at your disposal. Now, piloting a vehicle is actually kind of complicated. It's one of the more complicated concepts in this game. You can only accelerate or decelerate a certain amount in each turn. For instance, it takes a maneuver to go from speed 1 to speed, or from speed 0 to speed 1. It takes 2 maneuvers to go from speed 1 to speed 2, etc., etc., etc. Unless you have a maneuver that allows you to go full throttle. Now, because of the way that you're coming into this scenario, you're assumed to be going speed 3 already. So you are already moving at speed 3, but deceleration is also a thing that you have to keep into account. Handling is how many boost dice you get to make your planetary piloting maneuvers based on how maneuverable the vehicle is. So you get an automatic blue dice to any planetary piloting checks you make because that vehicle has a +1 handling. They go into the negatives too, so you got to watch that.
Okay.
Most of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. Maximum altitude, sensor range, blah, 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 blah. Oh, this thing doesn't actually say it has a gun. Man, this thing's making my life hard. I was hoping that thing was gonna be like, no, I have a blaster cannon. It's all good.
No, it doesn't look like it does. It looks like it should.
Oh,
because of the type of bike it is.
That's why I picked it, was because it was supposed to have a blaster cannon. Okay, so let me find something that's got a blaster cannon on it.
Excuse me.
You gonna live?
Hmm?
I said you gonna live?
Yeah. Oh, there's that bowcaster you were talking about.
Yeah, I found one, so I threw it out there for you to look at.
So what is cumbersome?
Cumbersome means you have to have a brawn rating equal to that number in order to use it without setbacks.
Oh, okay.
You
I'm fine.
You can pull those. Well, yeah, as a Wookiee, you're going to be fine. You can pull that number down by
mods and stuff.
Yeah, by like putting a sling and stuff on it. Oh man, that's some lag. Why is it doing that? Of course, I only have unarmed versions of these in my little collection here. Little bastard. I can't have him do a weapon check without a weapon.
I imagine not too many speeders are going to have weapons, though. It's not what they're normally used for.
Speeder bikes? No. But at this point, I'll just take another vehicle that has a weapon on it that I can just use. But I was hoping for an actual blaster cannon. Well, there's the Tobin reference I was looking for. Wait, that has it. Here we go. We'll use this one instead.
Okay, so... Ooh, that's a giant rock. Okay, so silhouette 2, speed 3, handling 1, hard points 1. So what are hard points again?
Hard points are attachments or modification points. So on a vehicle,
Okay, yep.
Yeah. You can also add weapons with them. But the important part is down where it says weapons, this one actually has the weapons listed.
Forward twin light blasters.
Okay.
Arc forward, damage 4, crit 4, range close, linked 1. So what's linked 1 mean?
Linked 1 means that if you roll 2 advantage, because it's a twin light blaster, it can hit with both blasters, and you would add your base weapon damage again. So if it hits for 4 damage and you trigger linked, it hits for another 4 damage.
Okay. So
really useful.
So whole trauma means it can take 4. It has 1 armor, which means it will be reduced by 1 once.
Yes.
And system strain 4. What does that mean?
System strain is just like your personal strain. It's how close the vehicle is to shorting out. If a vehicle hits its threshold for system strain, then the vehicle has generally been considered to run out of power, or to run out of fuel, or to, if it gets hit by an ion blast, to need to be reset and basically it has to be restarted if it's a computer-based thing.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends on the scenario it's in, but most of the time it's how much fuel do you have.
Okay. And then sensor range, what is that?
It's how far away you can see someone on a planetary scale for a speeder.
Didn't want to pull that card out. I want to move the deck. Okay, and how do these ranges relate to this short, medium?
So usually that's the first question. So for it's going to be different every time because it's abstract. So right now I'm going to assume for you to be a short distance away from these guys ahead of them. Okay?
Okay.
And first thing we're going to do is a planetary piloting check to see if you've made it through because you've been getting chased. Let's see if you're able to stay on the bike and stay on top of things and do the things you need to do. And we're going to upgrade that difficulty by 1 because you're not super familiar with the area. So it's going to be 1 red and 1 purple for your average check. You hear me say average, easy, hard most of the time for the difficulty of the checks, and that is 1, 2, and 3 purples respectively, and then I'll modify them to reds and blacks as the situation dictates.
So that is what I'd be rolling, right? 2 yellows, a green, a blue, and a red, and a purple.
Yep. So, yep, that's correct.
Okay, so now I'm gonna set myself up over here. So it'll be 2 ability, 1 proficiency, 1 boost, versus 1 difficult, 1 challenge. Yep.
Okay.
So it's 2 success, 1 advantage.
Okay. How would you like to spend your advantage? It's not a lot of advantage, but you can give yourself something small.
Okay, so I'm not firing. While I would have been driving, maybe taking advantage of the environment to force one of them to have to slow down a little bit and be a little behind the rest of the pack.
Okay. That's doable. All right. So
I think that makes sense.
Yep. So I won't usually push you to give me something off 1 advantage, but every once in a while it's just good to do the exercise. Okay. So I'm not going to have them roll for it. I'm going to say that it's for whatever reason, probably because you're about to come up on a dead end, you decide you need to turn and fight. So now I'd like to turn this into a gunnery check, because anytime you use a vehicle weapon, it is a gunnery check.
Okay, so that would be 3 green. Not bad. Okay. And would I keep the blue dice for that with this vehicle?
So no,
or would that only be for moving?
Yeah, it only handles for your planetary piloting. You can,
Okay,
however, still take a maneuver to aim.
Which would make sense for me to do. So I'll go ahead and take my 1 maneuver to aim. And then what would the check difficulty be?
So they're at short range, and at short range it would be 1 purple.
Okay, so I'll remove the challenge. So it'd be 3 green and a blue versus a purple.
Yep.
Sorry about that. I lost you there. So it'd be 3 green, a blue, and a purple, right?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Okay. So your 4 successes still come in on top of your damage, as well as your critical rating. Critical's 4, so you're not actually going to critical with that one. However,
I could use my 2 advantages to crit.
you can use your 2 advantages to link. So critical rating is 4. So if you look at the weapon, the critical rating is 4. But link can be triggered. So you do 4 damage for that, 4 base damage, and then 4 damage again for linked, which gives you 12 damage.
12 damage total.
Yes.
Firing into the back of the pack.
Yep. So you blow away 2 of them. We're going to count them as a minion group. This other guy's going to catch up. And you are left with a choice. You can fight them. You can run away. You can try to take refuge over here. You can do whatever you want. And then we'll get into talking in a minute.
Well, haven't I already used my maneuver to aim?
Your turn is over. Your turn is over. I just didn't have them take a turn.
Okay.
We're just teaching, so I'm not worried about whether or not they're going to be able to. I don't want them to take a shot at you because they might blow you off the bike. So.
Yeah, makes sense. So.
Also, on bikes and other open canopy vehicles, if you do critical, I often will allow players to say, I want to hit the pilot. That's another thing you want to keep in mind.
Oh, because if you knock the vehicle down, the pilot could still be alive. But if you hit the pilot, then they're completely out of the equation.
Yeah, well, it's also a squishier way to destroy a vehicle because your cannon is a vehicle cannon. So while it says it does 4 damage, it actually does 40 damage to a person. It's multiplied by 10 when done to it. If you were standing in the road and they shot you for 4 damage with that vehicle cannon, you would take 40 damage and most likely be dead.
Makes sense. And that would be using my advantage instead of linking, or would it be both because I had 2 advantages?
Well, you'd have to roll 4 advantage to critical, but yes. You roll your critical, and then you'd say, I want to shoot the pilot. And I will roll it again behind the scenes, and what I'm rolling behind the scenes is how much damage you do to him, because the assumption is that, you can hit the pilot, but he's not going to take the full effect. 9 times out of 10...
Because the vehicle's going to absorb some of it or something like that.
Exactly. 9 times out of 10, though, that vehicle's out of the equation. Enough. Yeah, one way or another, that vehicle's out of the equation, because even if you only partially hit him, he's probably going to either veer away or fall off or a number of other things. I mean, a speeder it's a motorcycle, and if someone throws a rock at someone on a motorcycle, that's still enough to kill them. So
yeah. So in this situation, what I would probably try to do to stay ahead of these guys is probably to swing on the underside of the ship right here to come around behind to see if they'd follow me and I could loop behind them.
Okay.
So that they couldn't be shooting at me. Kind of like do a donut around the ship, hoping they'd follow me into there so I could get behind them.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another planetary piloting. The way I'm going to break this down is you can't see where you're going, so that's a setback. And you are going to be under fire while you're doing it, so that's going to be an upgrade. So you're going to take a 1 red, 1 purple, 1 black check versus your planetary.
1 red, 1 purple, 1 black, and then my planetary piling is the yellow, the 2 greens, and the blue. Okay.
Yep. I love those checks.
One success, 1 threat, 1 triumph, 1 despair.
Yep. So, you do succeed in doing the maneuver. How would you like to spend your triumph?
So, I would like my triumph to be one of them catching onto the rock and hitting the rock as they try to follow me around.
Okay. So you pull off this maneuver, you swing underneath this vehicle. As you get to right about here and you're swinging back around to loop, you see one of these Tobins just smash clean into that rock. The other guy makes it and is hot on your tail, and you're looking at him when you come around this way, not seeing that this vehicle over here has started coming down the road, and you collide with it. And there's an explosion, and you fall off your vehicle. Well, you're not going to fall off directly. We're going to do an instigated collision. You're going to take a plus 40 critical to the bike. We're going to do the vehicle critical now. So you're going to roll your dice just like you would if you were taking a personal critical.
So it will be these two over here.
Yep, you're going to add 40 to that number, and then you're going to see what the vehicle card says.
So what is that? That's 16?
56.
So that'll be a 40, 56?
56.
Okay, so then let's search.
You don't have shields, so...
So did I get lucky?
Yep, you suffer 2 points of system strain for that card. Now, for the purpose of, keeping this going the way I wanted, you're going to fall off that bike. This thing's going to become a bloody mess as the Tobin slams into it too, and now there's a big explosion. And now you're on foot, and there's a bunch of angry Jawas wondering how you're going to reimburse them for their speeder. And you got to talk your way out of the scenario, preferably without ripping any Jawa's arms off. Because I know that Jane's solution to this would be, I pull their little arms off. So now
what happened to the other guy who also hit this thing?
He's dead.
Okay, he didn't make it.
Yeah, just don't expect it to be that easy in actual sessions.
Oh, no, that's why I'm like, okay, so this guy's on the ground, the Jawas want their shit, so I gotta kill this guy without fighting the Jawas.
Yeah. That is how it would normally go, but all I'm really doing this for, the point of this, is so that I can explain your presence skills, so like your charm versus your deception versus your leadership versus your coercion, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
Your talking skills. So, I don't know how you want to play this character or any other characters. I don't know your normal personality when it comes to talking scenarios.
So I put myself in the mindset of the character. So, David's seen my character that's literally, I'm going to show up, and I'm just going to whack the shit out of everything and be completely indiscriminate. And then he's also seen my character that forces other people to stop doing things and slowly contemplates and deciphers everything that happens. So I have a very wide range depending on what I'm doing.
Okay. But you don't have any skills except for deception that I'm seeing.
Right now with this guy. Well, I also have negotiation.
Oh, you do have negotiation. Okay, yeah. Okay, so generally, mechanically, you obviously want to lean into the skills you have points in, but you can use any of them. And the way I normally roll this is... Also, you wouldn't normally be able to communicate with them without a particle droid because you don't speak their language, but that's a whole other thing. But I would ask you how you want to approach the situation, and I'd ask you to give me a pitch. So I'm going to say 2 angry Jawas approach you. And they point at the speeder. You don't really understand everything they're saying because you only barely understand their language. But the gist of what they're saying is, you just destroyed our speeder. That's cost us a lot of money. You're at fault for the accident. You need to reimburse us for that speeder. Blah, 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 blah. Like, they're very angry. They've been in a car accident. And I'd like to know how you'd like to handle that scenario.
Being aware that these are Jawas and they're scavengers, I will point out the fact that I've put the lovely degree of 5 other bikes around them, and they can just take the parts from those, and I'll just go my own way because that will be more than enough to fix their speeder.
Okay, that is adequate. So go ahead and give me Jawas are... I probably don't have a Jawa card available. Let's go ahead and say that they are 2 purple difficulty versus your negotiate check. So what I normally do there is I'll have a card for the race you were talking to that's just their generic race, and I'll make the difficulty based on either their willpower or presence. But in this case, I don't have the card, so I just pulled that number out of my ass. I do that sometimes too.
So this is what it'd be for me.
Oh, there we
The
go. Oh,
negotiation.
so you failed. Okay, so you have not convinced them. They want you to wait for the police to show up. You really don't want that to happen. What's your triumph?
I mean, I'm a Wookiee. I'm pretty strong. So I feel like if I were to throw a part of one of these speeders that's large enough to block them, I'd have a pretty good chance of slowing them down, so I could just book it for the woods right there.
Absolutely. So you pick up a part of the speeder, you toss it between the two of them. They run backwards like, oh my god, the Wookiee's going to kill us, and you bolt. Okay? Give me an athletics check. There's some obstacles between you and there. You got to parkour a little bit. You can usually, for this, it could be coordination or athletics, but I'm going to give you athletics because I know you have it. And it's going to be a 1 red, 1 purple check.
1 red, 1 purple?
Yep, the red is because you're fleeing.
Yep. Go ahead and remove that, and go ahead and roll.
And you make it. And the Wookiee lives happily ever after, wild in the woods.
Which is on par for a Wookiee.
Right? Okay. At this point, we've covered talking. We've covered a little bit of equipment. We've covered a little bit of stats. We've covered combat 3 different ways. Questions. Because I know I missed a lot.
So knowledge.
Okay, knowledge is a good question. So...
Because I'm seeing I have like 6 knowledge things here, and I didn't take proficiency in any of them. So I have my basic intelligence, which is only the 2 green. But how does that work?
So the only person who usually puts ranks, well, that's not true. They've gotten a little bit better about it. Up until the last campaign, the only person who's really putting knowledge points in was Jeremy. And they were really leaning on that as the party, that he could figure things out. And if the party wants to continue to have the one guy who's smart, that's okay. But the last time round, all the players took different sections of knowledge so that they were covered. Because what I'll do, knowledge often comes into play when you're doing research, investigations, or planning. When they're sitting in a scenario where they're like, we want to go rob this building, I'll be like, okay, so who knows something about this building? Give me this kind of knowledge check. And they'll all kind of look at their sheets and mumble a little bit, and then they'll fail their roll, and I'll be like, well, I asked you for a knowledge education roll, none of you can do it, so you don't really know anything about this building. And then they'll go in there and shoot it up, because that's the only solution that they usually can come up with. Sometimes they do succeed. The knowledge types are pretty self-explanatory for what they're written. I will tell you that I tend to fall back to education if it doesn't fit one of the other categories for me. But at the same time, I can almost always shoehorn it into one of those categories. It's also worth saying that Streetwise and probably just Streetwise. No, Streetwise and Survival are other skills that, while they are used for specific things, are also basically like knowledge checks that aren't knowledge checks. So your Streetwise check I often use as a gather information check, since you're familiar with D&D. Streetwise will often be used in that format. Survival will often be used for, I want to set a trap, or you guys have landed in an escape pod and you need to find food and water, and I'll be like, okay, well, roll me a survival check for finding food and water. It's kind of a pseudo-knowledge check because it's more about what you know than your physical ability to do it, but it's the same thing. If you roll a character with a military background, taking warfare it just makes sense, because the players are going to naturally ask your character those questions, and then you're going to have to be like, well, I didn't put any points in that, so my guy's like the dumbest commander ever. And
makes sense, though.
Yeah. Other questions?
I imagine there are certain careers that will play into that.
Absolutely. And you'll see knowledge checks in those character creators.
So we talked about the social interactions aspect of it. On here I see some general skills like medicine, mechanic, computers. I imagine you use those more as an interaction thing?
Yeah, those are utility skills. And when earlier when we were talking and I said, hey, as your character advances, you want to take some some utilities, some secondary skills, some other play styles. That's mechanics, medicine, etc. Taking a point in medicine means your guy, like at that knowledge level, he'd be a low grade medic. That's really freaking useful. So, for instance, if you have a buddy with you while you're running, and he sprained his ankle while you guys were running into the woods away from the Jawas, you could then roll a medicine check based on the difficulty of the
see if
scenario.
you could set it.
Yes. If you have a med pack, it eases the difficulty unless you don't have any ranks. And if you didn't have a rank in medicine and you didn't have a med pack, I wouldn't even allow you to make the check. You have to have one or the other. You can have a rank in medicine and not have a med pack, and I'll be like, okay, well, first roll me survival because you're in the woods and see what you can find to make a splint out of. And then if you pass that check, I'll let you make a medicine check to splint his leg. So the utility things are really important. Mechanics is really important. Computers is your slicing ability or your hacking ability. I feel like hacking is just such a incredibly integral part of each party that you should always have someone with at least a basic level of computers that can slice. And that's important to understand. Now, with that said, if you, as a bounty hunter assassin class, want to take a bunch of computers and then you say, I want to slice this computer, understand that you'll be dealing with slightly upgraded checks as opposed to if you took a slicer class. And that is because there is...
You're not a slicer. You're not the expert in that.
Yes, you're not a slicer. You don't have the right equipment either is another thing. So that's another thing that would allow you to do it. But you have to have something in here that allows you to do the check. And a lot of times I'll let you do it if it's not your class, but I will require you to, I require it to be more difficult and for you to explain in more detail how your character is accomplishing this said effect. Like, you say, I want to slice into the, computer, and be like, okay, how does your character accomplish this? And if your answer is, well, I have these scripts loaded on this data pad and this data spike, I'm going to be like, that's perfect, go ahead and do it. If you say, well, I push buttons and it happens, I'll be like, yeah, let's go ahead and roll like a 4 red check. You might hit the right sequence of buttons. Probably not, though.
Okay. And then, I don't think it really matters right now, but we didn't really talk about the talent tree.
Okay.
And I assume that's because I'm not of a level to get into that, and that's something that would kind of naturally develop as we play and figuring out how that works.
So it's actually because it's so class specific. Every class has their own talent tree, and every one of them has unique abilities. And they are...
So just kind of what I'm getting at right now as I'm looking at this is there are some that are gray and some that are red. And what is the difference for those?
Red are active abilities. You have to trigger those abilities, usually with an action.
Okay.
Some of them are going to be incidentals, and some of them are going to be maneuvers. But if it's red, you have to trigger it somehow.
Okay. And then incidental. It's the first time I've heard you say that.
So incidental is free action. It's the same thing as a D&D free action. So, but in this game system, it's very important when you take a free action to say that you're taking it. Something else that I've had trouble with certain players, and I'm usually pretty lax about it. Like, some player will say, oh, I totally did such and such, and I'll be like, you didn't say you did such and such. He's like, yeah, I would have naturally done that. And I'll be like, all right, whatever, go ahead and do it. But every once in a while, I'll also be like, no, you didn't say it. And I usually when I say, no, you didn't say it, it's because I caught that they didn't say it. And I change the way the opponents address them because they didn't do it. If I do that, then the fact that you didn't say it meant that it didn't happen. If it doesn't really, if it didn't matter how the enemies were going to move because of it, then I'll let you get away with it.
Okay.
So.
Makes sense.
We
talked about... So, defense, we talked about it briefly, and that is, it absorbs the damage once?
Okay, so defense and soak are different.
Yeah.
So, defense adds a black dice. So, if this is your check over here, and the enemy has a level of defense, you are now that check.
Gotcha.
Okay, soak is after that check's completed, whatever damage you did, it diminishes by that. Armor on a speeder is soak. And then there's these little, you see these little zeros on top and bottom of the Bark Speeder card, where the little silhouette is. Those are those are its shields, which it doesn't have. But if it had those would act like defense. But they're also specific to the arc that it's in. So if it only has a level of shields in the front of it, and you swing around behind it, it doesn't get that defense.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Unless the pilot redirects their shields, but that's a maneuver they have to do. Oh, that's another good thing to go over. Ground combat cheat sheet, starship combat cheat sheet. As a new player especially, these things in this tray are going to be lifesavers. They have lots of examples of what you can do as maneuvers and actions and such in both settings.
I feel like that's something we should have talked about before.
Yeah.
Upgrade the ally character's next check, including equipment they're using. Okay.
And remember that these are just examples. So, it won't always be as hard or as easy as these are to do, depending on the scenario. But also,
this is just kind of like a baseline.
Yeah, this is just like a example sheet of things. But for a new player, I found this to be really helpful because it is an example sheet to give you ideas.
I mean, honestly, I'm probably going to ask questions more than anything else.
Oh yeah,
and just kind of learn through trial and error.
Zach's been playing with us for 2 seasons now, and Zach has just now got to the point where he's really understanding the way the system works. But Zach is also a very part-time player. Like, he'll miss 2 or 3 sessions back to back sometimes. So I'd say he's only really played about a season's worth.
Okay. And then how often do y'all play?
We play every other Saturday. This would be a off Saturday. Yesterday was an off Saturday.
Okay.
Now, we're also on break.
That works great then.
We're also on break. It's opposite of the Fridays that you guys have your other
Well,
session.
we have D&D every Friday. I run a D&D group on Saturdays that David's a part of.
Okay.
But for me, what I need to figure out is, because I believe y'all said you play at 8 p.m. your time?
Yep. And the time slot's
That's
something...
2 a.m. for me.
Yeah, I saw you said that. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that can't really change. Like I said, we're all kind of hard slotted into that time slot because of our kids and our schedules.
Which I understand and I get. And you will learn about me very quickly. I am not human with my sleep schedule. I will go 48 hours without sleeping, sleep for 6 hours, and that's my new sleep time, is that 6-hour period every day for the next 2 weeks. Yeah, I can just choose when I sleep and for how long I sleep and be good to go until I decide it's time to sleep again.
Okay.
It is not a normal thing.
I mean, when I was young, I could do that. But I'm getting the impression I'm significantly older than you are. So.
I mean, how old are you?
I'm 35.
You're only 10 years older than me.
Only, yeah. I'd murder a hobo to be 25 again.
Okay, let me also put this into perspective. I might be 25, but I have knee problems, back problems, I have carpal tunnel, and I have potential need for a surgery to repair a disc in my back already.
Yeah, those do suck.
So I might be 25, but my body has taken the beating of somebody much older.
So when we do roll an actual character, we haven't decided what theme we're going with. A couple
I'm not
things.
gonna lie, I'm digging the Clone Wars theme.
I really want to do it, but you have to understand that I'm the only person who's seen the Clone Wars all the way through. This is another thing. I'm the only person at this table with any legitimate Star Wars knowledge beyond the movies.
I could probably give you a run for your money very easily.
Well, that's good, because I appreciate that I don't have to explain what a bowcaster is, or that you would have to go to Kashyyyk to make one less rare. Oh, look, someone's laughing at me in chat. Someone's over like, yeah, you're super geek. I see you.
No, I'm the guy who gets into the arguments about people for what Quinlan Voss did with Ventress. That's not even in the movies or TV shows. Like I know that level of knowledge.
That's good. Now you also find that because I create my own universe, that I do shortcut some of that. It's okay to bring it.
Sense.
It's okay to bring it up, but I've had to. I have to change certain things. But the fact that you even know who those people are it's the best first step.
The fact that I said Quinlan Voss and you're like, yes! Or like Kirk, or the original Thrawn, not the watered down Thrawn we've seen. And
so I have mixed feelings about Thrawn because they brought Timothy Zahn in to do the new Thrawn. And
yes, but they also did bar what Timothy Zahn could do compared to it.
Yeah.
And it is still a good Thrawn, do not get me wrong. It's just I've studied the Jedi and then what he knows and that he gets surprised by it versus what old I studied the Jedi would have meant with old Thrawn.
Yeah. I mean, what's it called? Obiska Ray, the library world he attacked in Heir to the Empire.
Yes.
Like, that was... Basically, they didn't matter how many numbers they had or how much... everything that he said happened exactly when it happened. And it was just a really good example. It set the tone of that trilogy as to who he was. And I do feel like mixing the TIE Defender thing... So, I don't know if you watch Rebels, but they mixed the TIE...
I've seen everything.
They mixed the TIE Defender storyline into Thrawn, and I do feel like that's the kind of program he would have done, even though he didn't in the original Legends. I do feel like that's the kind of thing he would have done, but it's not as scary as the way that the later Thrawn ended up being.
The laters, yeah. But that being said, with where they're going with Mandalorian and what happened in, I believe it was Chapter 13, it definitely leaves the space for, as they're talking about making a MCU style universe with Star Wars through the series that they're going to have coming out, it definitely leaves him to be a Sano style character that in the 10 years since we've last seen him and him being stranded with Ezra Bridger, it would make sense that just immediately after stranding with Ezra and them having to survive together, he would have developed more knowledge of the Jedi and learn more of what he needed to learn about them. And so in 10 years, the amount that man would be able to learn and study can bring him up to that higher caliber that we originally saw in Legends.
I will say the ending of Rebels where they get sucked off into wherever. I did not.
So disappointing.
I didn't like it. I was mad about it. It's the second most disappointing part of Rebels that Thrawn and Ezra get sucked off in the void together. The most disappointing for me, because I'm a huge fan of the X-Wing series of books, is that they changed Wedge Antilles' background. And I was really disappointed about that, because I felt like they had taken pains not to step on Legends up until that point. Like, they weren't really following it, but they also weren't shitting on it too badly. But yeah.
That being said, even though they did change Wedge Antilles' background, and follow-on material in games and stuff like that, they have really embraced the new to make it fit his character well.
They have, and like if you've probably played Squadrons, and you're probably talking about the little speech he gives about being at Star Strike Academy.
Yeah.
But like that actually broke my soul a little bit, because I really like Squadrons, and he started talking about it. I'm like, no, that didn't happen. That's not how that happened. So. All right, so back to the obligation thing I was starting to get into.
Before I distracted you.
Yeah, it's all good. We're going to be off on tangents. It's going to happen. Make sure that you roll an obligation. So when you look at your obligation stuff, the way that obligation works, if that's the system I go with, because there's 3 systems, there's morality, obligation, and duty. And I usually only pick one of them. And I say, everybody roll it out. And this party hates using things that change the storyline against them. For instance, if you roll obligation and you roll a high obligation, because once you pick it, you're also supposed to roll a D100 to determine how much of it you have, or you can willingly take additional obligation after the D100 to grant yourself something special. You can also work out a special deal with me as the GM if you want something special. For instance, Remy is a character that Jeremy played, and he wanted something special, way outside of the parameters of a starting character. But it wasn't overpowered, it was just expensive. So he asked if he could take a bunch of obligation to pay for it, in quotation marks, and I totally gave it to him. And I was like, hey, you did this, but now you owe this person money to take care of this, and his obligation became debt. And it was a pretty big number, and every time I rolled it, that person would show up, and things would happen where he had to do things, and he had to convince the party to do things, which was really the hardest part, because in the beginning of a party, the hardest part is getting everyone to want to help the other members. That's the big thing. Now, I do have a house rule where you will only be allowed to go so far out on a tangent on your own before I say, okay, either I railroad you back in or you roll another character, because I'm not going to run a separate storyline just for what you're doing because you didn't want to hang out with the rest of the party. That said...
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
You should make an adventurer to be with the party, not to be on his own.
Yes, and I have never had a problem with that with any of the players. Almost everyone has instantly accepted and understood that. I have occasionally had a person push out and be like, I want to go do this while they're doing this, and I'll be like, this is the main storyline and bad shit's about to happen. If you go over here, you're going to be sitting a lot. And they did it, so that's how I did it. It has happened, but it hasn't happened to the point where I've had to say, okay, your character's now so far removed from the party that we have to either kill him off or, address it somehow. But obligation plays into it in that way, like, especially early on, because what will end up happening is you'll end up paying down your obligation as your character gets more advanced, and it'll become less and less of a hook, because by then I'll have hooked you into other things. But, you could end up...
When I read it, it seemed like it was a starting hook to get the stories started and make them personal.
That is exactly what it is. And as the GM, I may occasionally throw obligation at the party even later on, but it'll usually be obligation for the entire party. Like, when you guys want a starship, that's a prime time for me to throw in some obligation.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So that's the thing. Now, duty works the opposite way. Duty is your reputation with whatever service, usually the rebellion you're with, or if you're doing the Clone Wars, duty is your reputation with the Republic. If we play the Clone Wars campaign, you guys won't get paid in credits, and that's really important to understand. You'll get requisition tokens that'll be based on your duty and how well you did. And so the way I plan on doing it, if we do the Clone Wars era thing, is after each mission you'll take the amount of duty you already have, plus the amount you've been rewarded, and you will add that to your requisition points. And you'll use your requisition points to requisition additional gear on top of whatever you're going to be issued. I'll always give you enough gear to do the bare minimum, but you may want something extra on top of it, and that's how you have to spend...
Or something stronger, or etc., etc.
Yes. So that's how we'll probably do that. And you will earn XP in a very similar way. So because loot's a big part of the game, and doing it that way will cut back dramatically on what loot you can have, I'll start throwing things like XP tokens. Like, you'll open up a loot box, and instead of it having a really cool blaster, it'll have a weird-looking token in it, and I'll be like, that token represents 20 XP, which is a huge amount of XP in this system. So another thing D&D players have to get used to is your average session is 2 to 5 XP. And that, like, D&D players will be like, what, that's nothing. But 5 XP is enough to buy a whole starting skill. So it's a lot of XP for one, like, short session.
Yeah.
So that's something else to get in there. Now, if we do morality, that'll be rolling force users if we do morality, which... If we do the Clone Wars campaign... Yeah, if we do the Clone Wars campaign, I probably will tell everyone to roll me a either clone commando as a group or a clone trooper on the track to be an ARC trooper, and roll me a low-level force user like a Padawan. And I'll give you stats for it. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't feel like it's fair for some players to get force users and other players to be clones. Because of the difference in what you can do.
There are some people who would want that, though. Like, in that situation, I would want to be a commander or Captain Rex or Commander Cody style person working with a Jedi.
And I would
They
give you the
kind of-
yeah, I'd give you the option of
Right.
that, but I would also give you the option to play a Force user. David really wants to roll a Mandalorian group as well, which I didn't put in my initial list. I don't know if you've
I
read
would be
through.
down for that.
I'm sure everybody would be down for that. Last time I did it, though, because there was not as many Star Wars fans, they kind of turned it into a parody of Mandalorians. There was I'm sure David will explain it better than me, but they basically made a parody, and it was hilarious, and we had a great time, and I'm not mad about it, but at the same time, it was one of those things that hurt my soul as a Star Wars fan, to the point
As
where
a hard fan.
yeah, that was when we were done. I told myself, never again. We're not doing any more Mandalorian shit ever again. Like
But I
that's
think now with the Mandalorian series, there's more understanding of it.
I yes, except for the whole they never took their helmet off thing. I'm glad they eventually resolved that because that was really bothering me.
I knew immediately when that was presented that there was something else going on with the story.
I did too, but I couldn't put my finger on it, and it was always that nagging thing in the back of my head that was, what if Disney just doesn't care how badly this is messing everything else up? They just wanted that in there. Like, you can't put it past them.
I didn't think that for a second because Dave Filoni was the one who put that in there.
I got a lot of faith in Dave. He's also the person who helped forward the Dawn of Rebellion source rule book that we used in the last campaign. I'm a book collector, by the way. Like, I have pretty much all the Edge of the Empire books. And you will often hear me running to the bookshelf in the middle of a session because I want to use some cool piece of gear, something that I either don't have a card for or isn't in the generator. Which is one of the reasons that when, we were talking about the generator, I said don't do gear and credits because, A, it's always on your sheet even if you lose it, and that bothers me. And B, there's actually better shit out there that I made a bunch of custom cards. So, I think it's better to do money. Oh my god. We didn't talk about money.
No, we didn't.
So, you will have a card. I have deleted them all because I'm a moron. Alright, I really hope this doesn't kick anybody. I really hope this doesn't kick you out when I do this, but I'm going to try to open up a box with a ton of shit in it.
I mean, I got relatively low ping right now. I should be fine. Ish.
I mean, if it does, I think we've done most of the stuff for the table that we need to do. This is just... So I will give you a card, and there's two forms of currency I use at the table. There is your bank account, which is pretty self-explanatory, and I give you a little credit card shit thing that you use, and that represents your bank account. David will tell you your bank account can be hacked. It's just a very rare thing that happens. Or you can carry money on your person, which... Yeah, you can get mugged, but there are some times when you come across someone who will only take hard cash. This is another thing where Matt and Jeremy were playing merchant style characters, so they had hard cash. So David and Zach did not carry hard currency ever. They just relied on the other players to have it if they needed it, and then they would just wire them the chunk of money back so they didn't have to carry it. It's really because David doesn't want to keep track of all the tokens. That's what it really is. Like, I'll give you physical chits of money to put in your bag or on your part of the table that's your money.
That sounds annoying.
Yeah, so you do have to keep track of it. Because in real life, you have to keep track of your money. It's not like if you have cash, it just magically appears in your hand when you need it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this table's frozen now.
I just got a disconnect thing.
Yeah, I've got this spinning blue circle of death. Let's see if the stream's even still up. Kind of. Apparently we're nerds.
We are?
Yeah, apparently.
Oh.
This is waiting for the program to respond. Anyway, so you'll have to deal with money like that. So I'll give you a little card. You'll put your money on it. All you'll do is you'll right-click on it, go to the description, and type in the number it is, and you will be responsible for keeping track of that. I won't ever mess with it. And then I'll give you physical money. Like, often when you loot someone, the only money you're going to get is physical money, except for occasionally they'll be carrying cards just like yours. Those cards are often encrypted, so you'll have to find someone who can crack them open if you want the credits inside, which also comes with a whole, like, I use that as plot hooks all the time, where you loot somebody and you rob them, and then their relative figures out that, you know, their account's been hacked, and they trace it back to you, and then you got this revenge thing going on. Use that all the time.
Sounds like a great person to kill to get more money.
Could be that it's Boba Fett's uncle. You don't know. Like,
that would be a much more difficult one to take care of.
Yeah, it just depends on how much the GM hates you that day. So, oh man.
Note to self: don't piss off the GM.
Yeah. Well, I also have this rule, and I'm sure you do this all the time too. I tell my players, if a character doesn't have stats, they cannot be killed no matter what you do.
No, you can kill anyone.
That's my philosophy is, if they don't have stats, they can't be killed no matter what you do, and that's because I have to preserve some semblance of the Star Wars universe. So, characters like Darth Vader, even though they do have stats in the FFG system, I always tell my players, hey, that's Darth Vader. He doesn't have stats. And if you hear me say that, what that means is, you will run or I will wipe the party. That's just it's an unspoken agreement that we have. Yeah.
It's a you're not going to be able to beat this person no matter what.
Yeah, but I only do that with it. Literally, it's been Darth Vader and the Emperor have been the only ones that have been like, look, you run into these people, you better turn the other way. Yeah, this thing's hard crashed. There we go. Hang on while Microsoft fixes the problem. They're not going to fix the problem.
That's a lot of faith in Microsoft.
Right. I think that's probably good. We'll probably call it there for the day.
I think that gives me at least a basics for how things work beyond the actual physical mechanics I'm going to have to learn by playing.
Yes, and I will try for our next session, which I'll see when we can get some players together, because it will go easier with other people to help, because you'll get to watch them do things. I'll try to get some other players in. It's going to be difficult because of timing.
Holidays.
Yeah, we have holidays. Jeremy, his wife just had a baby, so that's why he's been out. You know, it's always difficult to get Matt to play, but it's going to be even more so because he's running a Cthulhu game for us and he's prepping a D&D game for us. So he's got all of that going on top of possibly popping into Edge of the Empire. But yeah, we'll get together when we can.
I always forget how little some other people prepare and run games compared to me. Because when I met Dan, I was running 25 games a week. When I met David.
Yep. 25.
So I
played this song and then something magic happens. Huh?
But I was also only working like 6 hours a day. 4 days a week at the time. I have since cut that back drastically. But like for me, running a large number of games is not hard. But I also am in D&D, I'm in what they call an improv DM.
That sounds like
I can improv almost anything kind of thing.
that sounds kind of like how Matt likes to do it. He likes to have a really intricate story, but as far as the actual prep work on the maps, most of his map, like if he's prepared a map, then you automatically know that that's really important. Because he's taken time to prepare a map, and therefore this is either a dungeon he wants you to crawl through, or it's a really significant thing that's part of the story. That's something you just know by the way he plays. With me, on the other hand, I will prep a gas station you're stopping at in between two maps. I will build a map for anything. All right, man. I'm going to head out.
Yep, I will catch you later.
Yep, it's been real. It's been fun.
Hopefully your people enjoyed our stream and us nerding out a little bit.
Well, at least one of them did. All right, man. I'll catch you later.
I'll catch you later, man.